in a place called the Eastern Alliance Kingdom. But in 10 years, this place will change. It will face a terrible destruction with massive explosions happening one after another. A country destroyed. The cause, the 5 great sins. In order to prevent this catastrophe, everything had changed drastically. Along sat there looking over the documents, lost in thought. He had taken on the responsibility of being their protector. Along thought to himself, I really never expected things would turn into something this massive, inside a luxurious mansion with dimly lit lamps. Once forced to work 78 hours a week like a slave, now he's in the body of a nobleman. In a fantasy world, sounds amazing, doesn't it? So lucky. On top of that, I'm apparently illiterate and have absolutely no special abilities. Along looked at the book dejectedly. What on earth does this even say? A helpless servant thought. He's holding the document upside down. A short while later, a servant spoke respectfully. Young master, it's time for dinner. He ate with delight. This is delicious. A maid spoke up. Have you finished your meal, my lord? Before you retire for the evening, I will prepare a bath for you. Just eating and playing every day, living the meaningless life of a nobleman. This is the life, Along thought. This really is the life. Except for the fact that I have absolutely no idea where I am. The maid spoke up. You should get some sleep soon, my lord. Because the other young masters will be returning tomorrow. He was surprised. What other young masters? She replied, Young Master Leo and Young Master Tonio, sir. You speak as if you've never even heard of the Palazzo family. His entire body froze. The Palazzo family? He was horrified. It was an unbelievably familiar name. The maids looked at him with concern as their young master. Along buried his face on the table in distress. Don't tell me. Is this psychedelia? Along recalled the title of a game he used to play. A game he played during the few rare moments of free time he had as a corporate slave. It was a turn-based role-playing game, regardless of which storyline the player started with once the 5 great sins appeared: wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession, the kingdom. The noble families and the cities would begin to fall into ruin. Among them, the family of Count Palazzo was the most infamous. They were a family of depraved nobles. They appeared in a side quest before the main story even began. Along collapsed to his knees in despair. That's right. I know this place all too well. He racked his brain searching for any information he could remember about this family. Along stared at the magnificent mansion before him in despair. Seriously, why did it have to be the house of Count Palazzo? The very first place to be destroyed by the 5 great sins. Please just let me go back to being a slave working 78 hours a week. What's the point of living in luxury if everyone's going to die in 15 years? This feeling is even worse than having my pay withheld for 6 months. Why does a transmigrator like me not get any special perks at all? Wait a second. Perks. That's right. Knowing the game's plot for the next 15 years. Doesn't that mean I know the future? If that's the case, then all I have to do is eliminate the causes of this ruin before they can even happen. And so, in order to enjoy a peaceful life as a nobleman, he decided to reform the 5 great sins. He told himself, they must still be just kids. Maybe there's still a chance to save them. 2 months later in his office, he listened to a report. I've rescued the orphans in the East. To be more precise, the victims who were turned into living test subjects. Among them, I have assigned the management of the orphanage to a girl named Utia. Along thought with satisfaction. My judgment was right after all. You really are a capable man. He replied, yes, sir, but was that a compliment? It was because the young master never showed any emotion on his face. He nodded. Yes, it was. In that case, Evan, I'll be counting on your support from now on. Evan stammered, this is going to be hard to get used to. Along looked at his reflection in the mirror and thought, this face used to be so expressive. It seems like my soul didn't fully sync with the facial muscles. Evan was a rare supporting character in the game, a loyal man, which is why Along recruited him. In any case, thank you for your praise, young master, he said. But about this time, you said the raid was to rescue a girl named Utia, correct? Along replied, that's right. Evan continued, I have to admit now I understand why you chose her. Even to my experienced eyes, someone who spent years wandering the mercenary world, that girl is anything but ordinary. He recalled the scene when he entered the prison to rescue the children. Evan was astonished. She's so powerful I can't understand why she'd allow herself to be captured so obediently. Why didn't you bring her here? Isn't that a loss for you, my lord? Along agreed. A sharp observation. He fell into thought. On the surface, it might look like I'm letting a powerful asset go to waste, but keeping things as they are is also part of the plan. She's a bloodkin who made a pact with an indescribable entity from another world, granting her immeasurable power. Later on, she will become Wrath, one of the 5 great sins responsible for the deaths of hundreds of people. But if she's raised in a peaceful environment, she definitely won't go down that path. Another doom flag? Well, I've defused the first ticking time bomb. Now I just have to come up with a reason not to bring her back. Along spoke up. Well, that's right. He propped himself up on his hand, emphasizing, because the time isn't right yet. Evan exclaimed in surprise, yes, the time isn't right yet. Along nodded. Exactly. Make sure what happened this time doesn't get out and provide for the girl completely. He accepted the order. Yes, I understand. Suddenly he took something out. And give this to Utah. Evan asked, is it a letter, sir? Is the content important? Along replied, it's just a letter to check on her. The poor girl went through something terrible like a biological experiment, so I thought sending some words of comfort to calm her down would be best. He took it. You even wrote a letter like this, my lord. I will deliver it carefully. Afterwards, he stood by the window watching Evan ride away on his horse. Along felt uneasy. I wonder if it'll actually comfort her at all. The real content hidden in that get-well letter was a phrase I heard at least 10 times while playing the game. It's a chant to befriend the bloodkin, so it should calm the sinful wrath. Be at peace. The sorrow of darkness, the void of light, one desire, one belonging. All of them are chants. They appear in the sinful wrath storyline, but by then she had completely fallen to darkness. She said coldly, it's too late. In the game, failing this part leads to a battle. But now, when things are still 15 years before that, maybe it's not too late. Along stretched and sighed. One of the 5 doom flags has been cleared. So, is it time for the next one now? The thought that you can befriend a monster with just a simple chant is ridiculous, but then again, they're a race that worships another world. So it's possible it might work. The minds of those on the extreme end of fanaticism are truly hard to grasp. Elsewhere, Utah was holding the letter in silence. Evan was startled. The magical power still radiating from the little girl was absurd, yet she had a strange, emotionless air about her, as if she had no feelings at all. She spoke, the one who sent that letter. It was Lord Along, wasn't it? Why didn't he summon me to his side? He panicked internally. What the hell is this? Evan stammered, well, he looked at Utah. For magical power to manifest physically, that should only happen when someone has reached the master level. He recalled his master's words, because the time isn't right yet. Evan hurriedly said, that's right. It's because the time isn't right. She immediately withdrew her killing intent. I see. The letter's contents. I will remember this. The sorrow of darkness, the void of light, shall slowly fade away. Evan watched as Utah was moved. That is surely a promise known only to the master. All right, we understand more or less. He was terrified, sweat dripping down his body as he stayed on guard. She gave a frightening smile. I will obey my lord's will. Meanwhile, on the other side, he lay on his bed. Today was a truly satisfying day. Even the bright moon is cheering me on. I have to try hard for the next round, too. Over here, a pile of books fell from the shelf onto Along's head. He squatted on the floor, sighing. It's not here either, huh? Finding a clue about the third thread is giving me such a headache. Evan ran in, saying, Young master, we've rescued the second child you mentioned. By now, there was a lump on his head. He said, Really? You're sure you treated the child well, right? He replied, Of course, sir. After that child was rescued from the illegal slave market. Suddenly, the door was kicked open with a loud bang. An aggressive-looking guy walked in and said, Isn't it this one? This was the second son of Count Palatio Tonio. He whistled and said, Why is an illiterate like you holding a book? Oh, that's right. I heard you've been studying recently, haven't you? He glared back and replied, You should worry about your own brother. He thought to himself, This guy is always such a pain. How did the old Along put up with this? I really want to fight back. But he immediately acted obedient, bowed his head, and said, It seems you still wish to use the library. In that case, I will take my leave first. Tonio immediately stepped on his head, gloating, You know your place, don't you? Suddenly a knife flew past him from out of nowhere. Looking closely, the knife was now stuck firmly in the wall. Just then, someone walked in from a distance and said, You insects are being too loud. Tonio looked annoyed. What the? The eldest son walked in, pointed at them, and said in a stern voice, I have no desire to see blood first thing in the morning, so get lost. This was the eldest son of Count Palatio Leo. The two immediately confronted each other. "Brother, I told you to drop that boorish attitude." As they entered the library, Leo immediately answered, "Get lost while you still can." Meanwhile, Evan quietly slipped away. The Palazzo territory had quickly vanished from the game. Along remembered his mission to investigate the Palazzo territory of the Astoria Kingdom, a land rife with vice. They ran an organization called Avalon, but their power was greater than he thought. Basically, these scumbag brothers were fighting for the position of head of the family. One was a major figure in the underworld. The other managed a large-scale illegal drug corporation. Along thought to himself, "For the sake of my own life, I can't go up against these two." And so, Along and Evan quietly let those two fight it out and slipped outside. Just then, the sounds of a fierce battle echoed incessantly from the library as objects inside were sent flying everywhere. Evan straightened the boy's hair. Along thought to himself, "I'll live a happy life under the guise of a weak and useless bastard child." After that, he returned to his room. He cried out wearily, "I'm so tired." Although the second child also seems far from ordinary. Evan, who was relaxing, turned to look at him puzzled. Seeing this appearance, Evan wondered to himself, how could a person like this possibly know about the illegal slave market and the secret biological experiments happening in other regions? How on earth? On the other side, the boy let out a long, lazy yawn. Evan found it hard to understand. It seemed his master was having a very hard time controlling himself. He was still lying on the bed, sighing, "I'm so tired." Evan suddenly spoke up, "Young master, you are indeed quite strange. You sent that child to the orphanage." Without looking at him, Along couldn't help but think, he said that child is far from ordinary. That boy isn't just not ordinary. He carries a level of destruction within him. Inside an allied empire formed from many nations, its central nation is the Kellyan Kingdom. The child we saved from the illegal slave market is the second boss of Psyche Dentada Macallion. After being sold into slavery and tortured, as he was moved from place to place, he became the embodiment of one of the 5 great sins, sloth. Afterward, he transformed into something like a demon. He destroyed nations in the most horrific ways imaginable. It was this part of the storyline that surprised many players with the game's cruelty. Contrary to his title of sloth, he was known to be an extremely diligent person, and he would repay both kindness and grudges many times over. That's why I had to stress to Evan to treat Deo with kindness. He trembled as he held his teacup and exclaimed, "It's all so vivid." Evan calmly said, "The reason we sent him to the orphanage is because it isn't time yet." "Right," Evan replied upon hearing that I had considered that before. "So the letter you sent to Utia was about the second child?" Along recalled the letter and replied, "Yes, and there was some small talk too." He recounted, "I told her to take care of the frail child I was sending. His figure there looked so lonely. His whole body was covered in wounds." Just then a pair of small feet approached. A clear voice rang out from behind Deo. "You're broken." The calm voice continued, "Those are the marks of that thing." His hand moved slightly. Utia appeared before Deo and asked, "The black sun, right?" She smiled and continued, "But the great moon still chose you. Congratulations." Utia gave a villainous, witch-like smile, her entire body radiating powerful magic. "So feel the power that has been bestowed upon you and let your potential be unleashed." She reached her hand out towards Deo, smiling as she said, "If you remain loyal and obey his commands, you will have your revenge." Just then, threads of magic began to emanate from his back. Utia smiled, looking up at the letter. "Now then, I should send my first reply." Under the moonlight, Along's message appeared. She wanted to send him a gentle greeting in return. Meanwhile, at the Count's mansion where they were living, Evan burst through the door as Along was still muttering to himself. "Just where is the third person anyway?" He suddenly said, "We have a big problem, sir." Evan continued, "Those scumbags. No, I mean the 2 young masters." Hearing this, Along looked up. "What is that bastard dead?" Just then, the deaths of the 2 young masters had occurred quite suddenly. He wondered. Really? After that, they gathered at the funeral service for the 2 young masters. At that moment, 2 beautiful women stood on either side of Count Palladio, speaking coquettishly, "Master." The other one also sighed. "When is this going to be over? I'm so bored." The one next to her, not to be outdone, cried out, "I'm hungry." Along on the side was speechless. Bringing illegal drugs and women to his own son's funeral, I knew this family was rotten. But this is truly a dark fantasy. Along looked down at his brother's body. Anyway, Tonio dying from an accidental fall. This is different from what I remember. Back in the game, the one beside him was the killer. After 5 long years, I've finally killed that vermin. Now I'm the rightful heir. He was now Count Palatio. He wept pathetically as if mourning the man he had finally managed to kill. After all these years. Yet now his face showed an expression that said, "What a wonderful stroke of luck." Along looked over, helpless. You could at least try to hide your feelings. The mastermind is definitely Leo or one of his lackeys. In any case, he stared at the person lying in the coffin. I just need to deal with the 5 great sins. 1 year later. Because the succession issue had been resolved and Leo had taken over the illegal drug business, the Count's territory had become much more peaceful. Now Along and Evan were sitting across from each other. Evan was just eating the food on his plate. Along looked at a stack of papers and thought about what had happened during that time. Utia and I have become pen pals. If I keep in touch with her, it will be useful for the future. Inside the letter, Utia began to recount Deo is very good at hide-and-seek. Hidan is great at mock battles and is growing up normally, and the kid Maggot loves puppetry. Along read with a faint smile. It seemed they were all good children. Below that was the line, this month's list of patrons. The moment Along saw it, he exclaimed, "The list has grown again. It's interesting that so many patrons have shown up for that little orphanage." Evan also commented, "It's a bit unusual, but it's a good thing nonetheless." "Ah, that's right. About that thing you've been searching for," Evan continued. "I've received word from the Information Guild. They reported finding a clue." Hearing this, he replied while eating, "Really, what a relief. It must be a list of the 3rd boss's subordinates. I can finally find him." At that moment, light from the window flooded the room, illuminating it completely. The two fell silent, each to their own task. Elsewhere, a blood-curdling scream echoed. "This is the Maggot illicit substance distribution point." 2 people walked forward, one saying, "The fish from the Palacio family is quite generous. He always grants us hefty rewards." The person next to him replied, "That's right. Our organization now has several hundred members." Just then they saw the murdered people before them. Just a little more. The sight before them made them jump. The people there were screaming in agony, "No! My hand! I've lost control of it. Help me." What followed was a scene of horror. All the people there simultaneously took their own lives, their desperate screams filling the air. Nearby, a figure stood silently in the shadows. Utia appeared behind them and said simply, "I quite enjoyed today's puppet show. It seems there's much more to report." In her hand were threads of magic controlling the puppets. Dua turned and asked, "Is there any meaning in you doing all this?" Yuta turned back to ask him, "Do you normally harm them?" Dua answered, "No, because they used other people to create drugs. I just don't know if this has anything to do with my revenge." She replied, "Of course it's useful. We are creating a space for his return." Utia flashed a villainous smile. "How can we let this place look so shabby when he arrives?" Hearing this, Dua replied without expression, "Understood." Immediately, the 2 of them activated their magic. A swirling wind rose up and they vanished. They were like phantoms floating in the night. Everything will happen according to his will. Then a light flashed brilliantly in the night. Under the peaceful crescent moon, Utia's voice rang out, "We Lam Naguyat are his sword." The place was now empty, leaving only a deep crater in the ground. It had been 2 years since he became Yuta's pen pal. Evan dragged his exhausted body along. "My lord, where are you?" Evan collapsed onto the grass. "I'm back." "So you were in the backyard, I see." Along said nonchalantly, "Oh my Evan, you startled me." He gestured and said, "The 5th child was sent safely to the orphanage." Hearing this, he was utterly astonished. In that time, the remaining 3 sins had all been saved. He handed food to Evan. "Here, eat." "Yes, thank you, my lord." As Along handed the food to Evan, he thought about finding the 3rd sin. Greed was a bit tricky, but with my gamer's insight after bleeding Evan completely dry, everything went smoothly in the end. After handing over the food, he said, "You've done well running all over the place like that. You can rest for a while now." Evan asked, "Is the orphanage mission over?" Along said casually, "Yep, it's done." What a relief. Evan lay down with a sigh, then asked, "But young master, you don't seem happy." "I am." He said, "You don't look like it." He pointed to his own mouth. "See, I'm smiling now. Then he flashed a completely forced smile. If you say so. The sunlight shone down. He stretched and took a deep breath. Along lay on the grass, lost in thought about this. This is progressing better than I thought. Everything is going smoothly. The masters of the Shikigami all became the 5 deadly sins after a past tragedy, although this was established in their past. Before they awakened as sins, the chance of perfectly saving all of them before their tragedies occurred was very slim. If I had rescued them after they had already awakened, it would have been much more worrisome. Just then, Evan asked, "How is the orphanage?" Evan handed him a letter. "Same as usual. Everything is going smoothly." Evan continued. "The children who were like broken dolls at first are a bit brighter now." Along opened the letter. "Really? Then we won't need any more caretakers." He thought, I never expected Utah could do this well. Perhaps it's because her character's backstory is tied to the orphanage. She must hate having people interfere. Along called Evan closer. "When you look at it this way, Utia is a good kid too, so is there anything special in there?" In the letter, Utia wrote, "Everyone is doing well. A few of the children here are growing up to be very beautiful. You really don't need to worry about the expenses anymore. And you don't need to worry about the children you just sent either." After reading the letter, he was pleased. It's great to see they're all being raised well. Along also thought, all 5 sins are growing up normally. I suppose environment really is important. Then Evan asked, "So, when do you plan on meeting the children? You always say there will be a time for that." Along stammered, "Well, about that." On the outside, he was quite hesitant, but in his heart, he had no intention of meeting them directly. It would be better in many ways if he got closer to them, but perhaps it was because their path to becoming sinners was too terrible and catastrophic. Their personalities, as seen in the game's flashbacks, had been awful since they were children. He carefully considered it. It was true that he had saved them before their awakening, so it should be better, but it was still scary. He stammered, "Maybe. Next year will be fine." Evan said, "I understand." Along let out a sigh of relief anyway. From now on, in this horrifying dark fantasy world, what he needed were some self-defense skills. He thought, magic requires talent, and as it happens, I have it. Evan spoke up asking, "But young master, have you heard of the Blue Moon?" Along replied that he'd never heard of them. Evan explained, "They are an organization that has become famous recently. They hunt down criminal organizations." Hearing that, he asked back, "Like taking out the trash, huh? Sounds like a good deed." But in his heart, he thought, "This isn't part of the lore I know, so they'll probably disappear soon." Evan said seriously, "But currently they are even killing nobles. That is why I thought you would know about them, young master." Along called out, "Evan, from today on, you will sleep in the room next to mine." Night was falling, the moonlight illuminating the entire mansion. Voices could be heard. "Now then, shall we hear the weekly report on the Blue Moon's activities?" Utia nodded and spoke softly. "The North." Sao Lang said cheerfully, "I've taken care of everything." He spoke casually. "The heads of the slave traders." He danced with joy. "See, they didn't even know who I was. I love the outfit you made for me. I told them that if they could guess my eye color, they could live, but no one knew." Rai also spoke up, saying that all the bodies had been buried cleanly. Radan, sitting on the stairs, added, "The South is done too." The man said, "The illegal human experimentation labs and that troublesome Avalon bunch were all torn apart without a trace." Utia smiled eerily. "Good. Everything is proceeding according to his will." She said, "We exist for the glory of the Great Moon." They were all part of the secret organization, the Blue Moon, who worshipped the Great Moon. However, a problem had appeared. Utia said, "Under his will, everything is perfect. How can a problem even exist?" Radan said, "The leader of Avalon was the Count's eldest son." Right. During the Southern Purge, a dangerous document was uncovered. It seems the Count's eldest son is plotting against him. This surprised Utia, but she didn't show much emotion. What? A demonic power emanated from her entire body. It was so terrifying that even those around her were afraid. She held up the piece of paper in her hand. "After the frail Count passes away, silently eliminate him with poison." She crumpled the paper in anger. "How dare he!" 2 years later, just as predicted, Challenger Count Palatio passed away. The officially announced cause was cardiac arrest, but based on the abuse of medicine leading to his death, it was too obvious. A voice rang out, "What, the Blue Moon again?" Along listened quietly. "Yes, They assassinated him in the night. So another assassination. A long thought. It seemed they were starting to be more cautious of the blue moon. Moreover, at the Count's funeral, no one shed a tear for him. It ended quietly in utter silence. Every single person left coldly. Evan spoke up, asking, "Young master, what should we do?" "In the next year, the commoner. Will the eldest son inherit the title? What's with all this luggage?" Along was packing his bags. "You pack too," he said. "We're leaving." Evan was surprised. "Leaving? Are you going to leave the mansion?" Along replied, "Not exactly. We're heading south after we're done packing." Evan asked, "The south? You mean Rossman?" "Yes, I've decided to move to a small village. In the southern part of the Palazzo territory lies Rossman." There was someone on an upper floor observing his every move. Leo had been watching from beginning to end but said nothing. The delicious scent of fried eggs and bread from the pan. He cheerfully fried the eggs in the pan, making one's mouth water. The happy life of the two didn't last long. After 3 days, they had returned to the Count's mansion. Along scratched his head in frustration. "Now what, another funeral for the eldest son?" he said dejectedly. "I can't believe it. We're back in this blood-soaked place again." "The signs of death are very different this time. How did he die?" Looking at Leo in the coffin, the cause of death was a sword to the heart. A long thought. Who could it be? Who killed Leo? At that moment, he turned to ask the guards about the cause of death. The guards immediately panicked. They jumped, terrified. "Our apologies for looking at you." Along froze too. What's wrong with them all of a sudden? Along walked past the crowd. Evan followed behind, calling "Young master." He asked quietly, "Evan, did you find anything?" "Yes, about that." Evan whispered, "Young master, could it be that you're the one who wiped out Avalon that night?" He looked at Evan then, turned to look at the other people in the mansion. A few days ago, on the day they left for Rossman, Evan had spoken up. "By the way, young master, if you're leaving anyway, wouldn't it be better to just pick a city?" "No, absolutely not. Rossman is the final destination in my plan. I've saved the 5 great evils from their fates and prevented the world's destruction. Rodman has no connection to the main storyline, and it even has the Palazzo Villa. It's the perfect place to live a comfortable life as a nobleman. The perfect place to live a sweet, sweet life. There's a reason for everything." Evan immediately cut in. "I won't be fooled again, sir. You always brush things off like this when you're preoccupied." In response to Evan's sigh, Alon just clicked his tongue. "Fine, believe what you want." As the carriage pulled away from the Count's mansion, Leo watched, thinking to himself, "Should I kill him or not? He's useless whether he's here or not anyway. I considered getting rid of him with poison after Father's death, but since he's quietly heading for the border, there's no longer any reason to kill him. Maybe it's just because things with Avalon haven't been going smoothly lately." He gripped the railing, the troublesome thoughts still lingering. With that, he ordered his servant Anmin to follow the carriage. Anmin, Leo's right-hand man, spoke up. "Does this mean you want me to kill him, my lord?" Leo was taken aback. "What?" He was surprised. Anmin, the man who followed his orders without a single complaint, and now he was suddenly asking a question. And displeased, Leo snapped, "Your job is to do as I say." But just as he uttered those words, a sword was thrust into his chest. Leo's voice trembled. How dare you betray me?" The man replied, "I quite enjoyed this little civil war, but I am Hedon, a member of the Blue Moon organization, not Anmin. Anmin was fun while he lasted. We were taught by the Blood Moon. The Blue Moon is his sword. We act according to his will. But if anyone dares to harm the Great Moon..." As he spoke, he pushed the blade deeper into Leo. Then he yanked the sword out decisively. "We are permitted to act on our own accord." Blood from the blade splattered across the floor. He watched as Leo collapsed. "That's the reason I was waiting for you to say those exact words. I can't believe it took a whole 2 years." Leo threatened, "My men won't let you leave here alive. Because of those words you just uttered, Avalon will now vanish from the continent forever." He looked at Leo with mock pity. "It's such a shame. The Great Moon gave you a chance." With that, he leaped from the balcony and vanished. The sky began to lighten as the sun rose just like any other day. To Rossman, this was truly paradise. He woke up cheerfully. "Good morning. Waking up whenever you want. Gazing out at another peaceful day. Eating whenever you want and whatever you like. I can finally enjoy the life of a proper nobleman." As he ate, he thought, maybe I should start a bakery business. Just then Evan entered with a letter in his hand. "Young master, a letter has arrived for you." Taking it, he wondered, "What's this?" The piece of bread in his hand dropped to the table. The letter stated that following the death of Leo Palatio, requested his immediate return. And just like that, his free ride in paradise was over. In just 3 days. There he was, standing glumly at his brother's funeral back at the mansion once again. Looking at the terrified faces before him, he wondered, "Why is everyone reacting like this?" Evan spoke up. "Young master, since when were you the mastermind behind the annihilation of Avalon?" Alon was completely baffled by the question. In other words, he has been thrown into a never-ending spiral of insane situations. Alon sat huddled in a corner, despondent. "Hey, Evan, can you explain this to me in a way that I can actually understand?" "How in the world did I become the mastermind?" Evan stated calmly. "Because, sir, you are the only one who survived. Leo was assassinated right after we left the mansion. This gives you a perfect alibi and makes you the sole heir." After hearing that, Alon froze. He was starting to see the problem. Evan continued, "Avalon has vanished, so there's no one left to make a fuss about Leo's death. And just like that," Evan said with a grin, "you've become the prime suspect. With a master assassin under your command, aren't you pleased? And what's with that outfit? Good grief, when the hell did I ever start something like this? There's no organization out there that could wipe out a major player in the underworld that fast." Alon then asked, "Now that you mention it, didn't you say there was an organization that hunts other organizations? Are you referring to Blue Moon, sir?" "Yes, do you think it could have been them?" Evan considered it. "The Information Guild says it's unlikely. They said Blue Moon doesn't leave bodies behind, but they always leave their mark. However, the members of Avalon were all killed by... and the sword. They said it was a scene straight out of hell. So that's why I'm the mastermind. Because I have a master swordsman under my command." At that moment, it clicked. That's right. Blue Moon doesn't even appear in the game. There's no way a weak organization that vanishes before the main plot even begins could be the culprit. Then who the hell was it? "This is Utia. Any traces left behind? We left nothing." "Me neither, same here." He laughed gleefully. "There's nothing left there but a pile of corpses." Just then, the door opened, and a familiar voice called out, "We've arrived!" Raiden's group walked in. "The remaining Avalon forces number 486, Raiden reported. Exactly as the boss planned." He laughed, saying, "We've cut them down." Utia, hearing everyone's report, was extremely pleased. "Good, perfect, just like that." Avalon, the massive organization that once dominated the kingdom of Astoria, was turned to ash in just 5 days. But Raiden interjected, "However, it seems the cleanup isn't finished yet." "What do you mean?" He held up a stack of documents. "I've found more nobles connected to Avalon. The Duchy of Antia appears to be deeply involved." After hearing this, Utia was silent for a moment. She opened the documents Raiden had brought, radiating her usual terrifying aura. "You already know what I'm going to say. Don't you—" Everyone understood her words. They said nothing more. Radan spoke up, "Let's just take care of them quietly." Utia then let out a breath. She turned to Guy and said, "Information Guild, everything is clear, isn't it?" Guy picked up a paper and replied, "Correct. They are treating this matter as unrelated to Blue Moon." Doe, who was beside him, added, "The other guilds are the same. They're calling it the hell created by the Swordmaster." Hearing that, she asked, "Are we still monitoring them?" Utia smiled faintly and said, "Continue. This matter must absolutely not involve that person. I've said this countless times, so everyone understands, right?" He then made the papers beside him float in the air and continued. "But it was because that person's own blood relative tried to target them. This case didn't start with an order, it was a reaction to remembering that person. He said, 'We are a sword.'" Upon hearing this, Utia became visibly excited. She covered her face and said, "A sword isn't supposed to think for itself, right?" Her eyes flashed with a red light. Turning toward the window, she said, "Blue Moon must act on orders. Remember that. He knows everything." The 4 others looked up tensely, her voice filled with determination. "We will never disappoint that person." Doe looked at Utia confused. "I don't get it. Why would someone as exceptionally capable as Utia be so anxious and restless just over the thought of being found out?" Then he raised the stack of papers and said, "I understand. It's all for the Great Moon for that person." Meanwhile, at the Count's residence, the lights were still on. Along sat at his desk and sighed. "I can't take it anymore." He looked up, tears streaming down his face. After the funeral, he had been extremely busy for an entire month. Alongside, I just want to relax and live off my money. That's what nobles are supposed to do. He looked down and thought to himself, although I have made a lot of enemies. Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years from now anyway. Because of my brother's death, I've changed the game's timeline. All the family's work has been dumped on me. The heir. Suddenly a voice called out, "Young Count?" Several old men immediately walked in, each of them holding a pile of items, books, or scrolls. Seeing this, he sighed even more deeply. The dark circles under Along's eyes were now clearly visible. He wondered, why is everyone working so hard? When the previous count was alive, they worked at a leisurely pace and even cut corners. From a distance, the old men saw his gloomy expression and the wave of his hand and became terrified. Is he angry? I have to work even harder. I don't want to die. And so his face grew pale from overwork. The vassals must be working so hard because of those rumors about me being a mastermind, right? I told you to come, so why didn't you? At this point, Along was nothing more than a corporate slave. He just worked in silence, but in his heart he wished they would just take care of everything themselves. Scene change. A fire blazed as meat was slowly being grilled. Evan asked, "Young master." He looked confused. He looked up and asked, "What is it?" I have to say, I'm truly surprised. Along was controlling magic, making it fly around the room. Evan continued, "To reach rank 2 in just 2 years of self-study. That's outstanding talent. When did you start developing like this?" he went on. "Normally it takes about 4 years to reach rank 2 and magic is unusable. Unless you were born with a blessing," he answered calmly. "I guess I just have some kind of talent. Since I was worried, I've been training hard for self-defense." Along thought to himself, this technique also requires precise mana control. He kept the magic flying around him non-stop. But the important thing is that it's still incomplete. A tired look appeared on his face. I never thought I'd actually be using magic in a fantasy world. He controlled the magic and said quietly, "At first I was really excited. Once the plan is complete, there won't be any more danger, so I was just going to slow down my studies." Right then the magic orb flew up. But recently, survival has become a real issue. I've realized a certain truth. His eyes welled up with sorrowful tears. My mana hole is super small. Alongside. Nothing works. At this point, he recalled the information about it. The mana hole a person is born with is like an athlete's physical build. It's fixed from birth, and his mana hole was just a little. Thinking about it was incredibly painful. He realized the truth was that it was so small that even training couldn't help. As he sat and ate, he thought, if all other methods fail, there is one other way. Just then Evan picked up a letter and said, "Ah, that's right. A ball invitation has also arrived for you, young master." Hearing that, he turned to look. A ball. And soon the day of the ball arrived. He was now at a lavish mansion. Nobles were gathered all around. He, dressed in the attire of a count, walked in with Evan. As soon as he entered, he sighed, "Phew, I'm already tired. A gala? A typical ball for networking among nobles held in the southern region of the Kingdom of Astoria. Since he would soon become a count, perhaps he should take this opportunity to build a few relationships." Along adjusted the cravat on his neck and walked forward. Behind him, Evan, while munching on a pile of food, asked, "What are you doing, my lord?" he thought to himself. "Getting acquainted with the other nobles is important for my peaceful future." But as he approached, everyone around him was terrified by his appearance. They quickly avoided him. He then reached out his hand to greet someone nearby. He immediately panicked, and then the whole group ran off as if they'd seen a ghost. Evan beside him couldn't help but laugh, trying to console him. Don't be sad." Along watched them leave and thought to himself, sad. Not really, I saw this coming. Then he said, "Evan, we're leaving." And with that, he turned and left. I knew I'd be ignored for my lack of dignity. I'm not like the glorious Palacio of old. Evan, trailing behind, scratched his head in confusion. Along's face was grim, for now he was the black sheep of the East. But he hadn't come here without a plan. Along raised his wine glass. "I'll handle this situation, using the social skills I've secretly practiced." He then spoke up, "The flavor of this wine is quite distinctive." A girl nearby turned her head towards him. His expression was terrifying. Using a deep voice, he continued, "The aroma in particular is quite unique." Along let out a soft, demonic-looking laugh. I'd like to have a few bottles of this at home. But in his mind, he was thinking, this is a gentle smile essential for socializing. The girl, however, saw his face turned pale and trembled. Then she ran off in terror, yelling, "I'll speak to my father and prepare it at once." Along watched her completely bewildered. "Wait, that's not—" he muttered to himself. "That's not what I meant at all." Behind him, people began to whisper about him. He threatened her to get his hands on a limited edition bottle. He's even worse than his brother's, a complete scoundrel. Meanwhile, Evan patted him on the shoulder, stifling a laugh, while Along tried to deny what just happened. "She must be the shy type," he concluded. Later, as they were leaving, Evan said, "Your collection of spoils has grown yet again, my lord." He added while munching away happily, "It's quite an impressive list." Beside him, a dejected Along mumbled, "And I even studied up on wine." In his head, he listed his acquisitions, a fine horse from Pandam Quick Fahrenheit metal forged by Volanda and specialty wine from Malentino. It turned out the Palacio name was even more infamous than he'd realized, and because of the rumor that he'd killed his own scoundrel brothers, he'd become someone everyone went out of their way to avoid. "Well, so much for socializing. Is it just me, or have I become even more distant from everyone?" he said wearily. "I'm going to get some fresh air." Evan stood firm and replied, "Yes, my lord." From the back of the room, a red-haired girl was quietly observing him. She watched him, seemingly lost in thought. A moment later, he went outside and leaned against the railing, taking in the view. He kept wondering to himself, where did it all go wrong? Just then a voice spoke up. "Excuse me." "Hello. Might I have a word with you, sir?" Startled, Along spun around. Did someone just speak to me? Who was it?" But when he looked, there was no one there. Suddenly a voice spoke again. "I am—" Startled, he looked down to find a small girl standing before him. She introduced herself, Loria, third daughter of Duke Antia. Hearing that name, he thought Antia. "Of course," Along replied. "Hello." The Antia family, the black sheep of the north, and one of the three great villainous houses. Along thought to himself, anyone who willingly talks to me can't be normal. He looked at the little girl thinking, but why don't I remember her? I don't think I ever saw her in the game. Just then, Loria spoke up. "I will be direct. Please lend me your power." At that, Along's expression turned dark and fearsome. Flustered, Loria continued, "I am going to be assassinated soon." Her words hung in the night air, strangely calm. Loria looked up, her expression full of fear. Hearing her words, Along thought, "I received my father's affection, and until now I've always been protected as his illegitimate son. Duke Antia has fallen gravely ill," she said in a panic. "But now—" She hesitated, then continued, "My half-sisters, they're going to kill me." "So it all just comes down to a battle for survival, huh?" Along looked down, and it all clicked. "No wonder I don't remember her. She was already dead by the time the game began." Loria pleaded with desperation in her voice. "With your strength, Sir Along, please." But his answer was simple. "I refuse." Loria pressed on. "I'm not asking for your help for nothing," she said anxiously. "If you help me, I will give you half of the Antia estate." But he had already turned to leave. "That is all. I will take my leave." Inside, Along thought, "It's a sad story, but just keeping myself alive is difficult enough as it is. I can't afford to get mixed up in any more trouble. And even if I wanted to help, I can't. Contrary to the rumors, I don't have any special powers." Still, Along couldn't help but glance back at her. Standing there all alone, Loria stood in sad silence. He rubbed the back of his neck and let out a sigh. Turning away, he thought, "I hope something good happens for her. Hopefully she'll find a strong ally." And with that, he headed back into the party. Meanwhile, two cloaked figures were speaking nearby. "So Antia has drawn close to the great moon, has she? We should let the red moon know that good things are coming her way." His female companion replied, "No, there's no need. If our information is correct, she is the only member of House Antia with no ties to Avalon." From their perch above, they watched Loria, which means she is not one of Radon's targets. He turned away. "That's for the best. All the other members of Antia will be dealt with in time. Indeed, as per the Red Moon's command, we will focus on cutting off all information channels so word of the Avalon incident never reaches him." From their vantage point, they silently watched Along down below. Meanwhile, back at the party, Along sighed. "It feels so empty around here. Am I surrounded by some kind of invisible barrier? he failed to notice a mysterious woman standing nearby. "Hello," she said. Hearing someone actually speak to him, Along was overwhelmed with emotion. Was that for me? Really, could it be that this time I can actually make friends with a noble? Along quickly turned back. "Yes, hello?" The girl smiled softly, covering her mouth with a fan. The moment he saw that, he knew. "Oh, not again. Is this another shady character? I've seen that face in the game before." He just glanced at the girl. As he thought that anyone who actively strikes up a conversation with him can't be an ordinary noble, he realized who she was and walked over saying, "Hello, Lady Zenonia." Seeing that he recognized her, Kalia was surprised. "Oh my, you know who I am." He calmly replied, "Of course, you're very famous. The three most notorious villainous families in the Astoria Kingdom House. Antia in the North House, Palatio in the East, and finally in the West, the Zenonias." She brought to mind a noble serpent. Kalia let out a soft laugh. "Famous me. She is the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia. If the Palatios are a criminal gang, then the Zenonias are the high-class version, a kind of legalized mafia syndicate." He couldn't help but shudder at the thought. "I just need a few connections with the nobility to live a peaceful life." He silently resolved this, even though his life was already half on the line. "But for the sake of this sweet life, I absolutely must not get involved with them." Alon said with a charming smile, "It's because you're so beautiful." Kalia replied, "Thank you for the compliment." She smiled and said, "I'd love to talk more. What do you think?" Alon calmly replied, "I would like to as well, but there are too many watchful eyes." In his heart, he silently pleaded, "Please just let me leave quietly." Kalia looked at him and said cryptically, "Just as the rumors say, huh?" Then she turned to leave. "I hope to see you again soon." Hearing this, he was confused. Then Kalia turned and walked away. Alon watched her bewildered. What the hell just happened? Two figures watching from above looked down and spoke. "Regarding the Avalon incident, it's completely locked down." The other one added, "However, a new tale has just appeared." They looked toward the window. "There's someone hiding in the trees. That person is still tailing him." "A tail, huh?" Then two small figures quickly darted away. "We don't have direct orders yet, so let's just observe. We can take care of it if needed." Scene change. Evan scratched his head, confused. "Young master, are you sure this is the real one this time?" They stood before a canyon. Evan was skeptical. "Is this canyon really the place we've been searching for all this time?" He continued. "Even though it's the middle of the day, it's strangely dark inside, isn't it?" As for his face, he looked like he was about to ascend to the heavens. He clenched his fist. "I've finally found it. My real objective. The environmental effects match, so this is definitely the place." Evan sighed. "If this turns out to be another fake, I think I'll get depressed." As they walked inside, they observed their surroundings. There were inscriptions on the stone slabs. He replied, "This one's the real deal. This place was much easier to find in the game." In truth, the reason he went to all this trouble to come here, under the pretext of a reconnaissance mission, was for the Southern Labyrinth. That labyrinth is called the Labyrinth of Whispers. Solve all the puzzles in its 8 rooms and you will receive a precious holy relic as a reward. Alon smiled as he looked ahead. I still remember the entire guide, and this incredibly satisfying feeling of grinding for levels and farming items. Before them was a massive gate covered in strange characters. He looked up and mused, to see the labyrinth entrance with my own eyes in real life, even though I got so sick of this place in the game. But standing before it now feels completely different. Evan spoke up in amazement. "This canyon, it looks like it was carved by human hands. How do you know about places like this?" He raised his head and said, "I've been here many times." Hearing this, Evan was confused. "You've been here many times." Startled as if waking from a daydream, Alon said, "Just kidding. I have my ways, let's go." Seeing his horrifying expression, Evan cried out, "Please don't say things like that with such a serious look on your face." The moment they stepped inside, they heard the roar of a monster. Its huge hands clapped together, creating a terrible sound. Evan looked around. He exclaimed, "In a place like this, it feels like you'd be crushed to bits for solving just one puzzle wrong." Alon, however, remained silent, assessing the situation. The terrifying sounds continued to echo. Evan stared in shock at his expression. He was emotionlessly writing something on the stone tablet. How can he be so calm? He watched Alon's face, intently writing the words, completely baffled. Even in a situation like this, and Evan recalled the things that had happened. It had already been 4 years since they started traveling together. and I still can't figure him out. None of the missions we've done have been the same. Paying off someone's debt, helping a slave, rescuing an orphan, taking down a demonic organization, delivering a meaningless letter. At that moment, the monster didn't seem to be finished yet. He felt confused. And yet, how does he know this place inside and out, when he supposedly never even left home? But Along calmly pointed at the monster and said, "The riddle was solved correctly, but it hasn't opened yet. We have to wait for that other thing to finish." Continuous sounds echoed endlessly. Evan kept thinking to himself, even so, following this mysterious young master always leads to good things. The two of them looked over. He said, "Oh, it's opening." Evan screamed internally. "What are you planning this time, young master?" Meanwhile, deep inside, Along was screaming to himself, "It's finally opening. Oh my God. I'm gonna throw up. I knew this place was tough, but I never thought it would be this brutal. I nearly broke my neck trying not to look." Then before their eyes was a massive pile of precious jewels illuminating the entire room. Evan exclaimed, "It's finally over, isn't it?" Along said calmly, "Yeah, let's grab the black ring and get going." In the distance, 6 rings were mounted on a mannequin hand. Seeing this, Evan said, "That one, it looks terrifyingly useless." Along picked up the black ring and said, "It is a bit big, true, but touching anything else will only bring more trouble. Just leave them." He silently looked at the ring, thinking, "I've finally obtained the ring of restraint." Along spoke again, "Don't worry, the way back is safe." Evan stammered, Yes." As he walked, he relaxed, thinking, thanks to remembering the game guide, this was a piece of cake. But then his expression soured. "Young master, did you anticipate even this?" Before them was a horde of giant golems, so those rocks in the canyon were actually golems. Evan worriedly calculated in his mind. An unknown enemy, just great. There has to be some way to get him out of here. Along walked straight forward and said, "This time I'll do it." Hearing this, Evan was stunned. The horde of monsters turned towards them in unison. Evan warned, "Whatever you're planning, the top priority is to get out of here." Just then one of them charged to attack. He cried out, "Wait, a level 2 spell probably won't be enough." At that moment, Along whispered, "Restraint activate." The ring on his hand flashed with a black light. Immediately after, the golems seemed to change. A light flashed and a voice echoed from the air. "O fragment who inherits the great will of Nealala, state the 2 restrictions by which you can grow." Along stood in the middle of a pitch-black space. He started to look around. In the game, a selection window would pop up here. So that voice is... Just then, a giant face emerged from the darkness. The reward for clearing the labyrinth of restraint. True to its name, it's an absorption-type artifact that grants the user power. But in exchange, there are strict restrictions. Along trembled, slightly tense. That voice sounds too real. It feels like I'm actually in this world. He said, "First restriction." The being spoke, "State it." Along continued, "In all magic, the incantations of Babylonia are absolutely mandatory." The voice then asked, "What do you wish to achieve from this restriction?" He immediately answered, "The power to bend the rules of the world just a little bit more." Streams of power in the air swirled and were bestowed upon him. Along looked up at the dark scene. Light gradually appeared. He said, "Second restriction." The voice continued to echo, "State it." Along formed another hand seal and continued, "In all magic, only the sacred tongue of Babylon may be used." The voice asked again, "And what do you desire from this restriction?" He calmly replied, "The same as before." The being seemed to fall silent for a moment. Along looked up, confused. Damn it, did I mess up a step? I even mimicked the skill icon perfectly. Choosing both the incantations and the sacred tongue as restrictions gives the strongest attack power. He couldn't help but break into a cold sweat, worried. I've mastered all the seals and chants, from playing over and over countless times. That means this has to work. A moment later, the being spoke again. "Accepted." The voice echoed faintly through the space. "O human who remembers the incantations and mystic words of the great forgotten god, we express our gratitude to the one who carries on his will." Hearing this, Along was confused. Carries on his will. What does that mean? Immediately after, the ring on his hand vanished. He guessed the ring was being absorbed into his body. It seems the restraint was successful. The voice echoed one last time. "We will always be watching you. You who inherit that will." Back in reality, the situation was still dire. Evan shouted, "Young master, a level 2 spell!" Before him was the horde of massive monsters. He reached a hand towards Along worriedly, thinking, "It's not enough." Along looked up calmly, his eyes without a single ripple. His hand began to activate the magic. The iron sphere that should have shone brilliantly only flickered weakly, even though he had poured all his mana into it. No matter how much I trained, I could never overcome my limits. He calmly created a magic sphere in his palm. Well, then it's time to test the power of the restraint. The sphere gradually accumulated more power as the monsters charged towards them. Along raised his hand, controlling the magic sphere, and its price. When the refraction art activated, the sphere transformed into an ethereal blue flame. Next was the resonance art as sparks of lightning continuously struck the veins of the stone. The sphere grew brighter and brighter in the dark space. With the blue light art, the sphere enlarged, spun, and fired a continuous barrage of lightning bolts all around. And finally, the linear diffraction art. Along skillfully changed his hand gestures for the spell. A powerful current of electricity shot out from his hand. The current shot directly straight at the ones hunting them. Evan witnessed this spectacle utterly stunned and amazed. Bolts of lightning shot out everywhere. The hunters disintegrated as the excess electricity continued to flow. The giants were struck until they were motionless and powerless. Along and Evan stood on the cliff. They silently observed them. After just a few seconds of quiet, another storm of lightning erupted, sweeping through the giant stone men. Their limbs were torn apart as they fell. Flashes of lightning sparked and then gradually faded. Along and Evan stood on a cliff looking down at where the giants from before now lay as nothing but piles of shattered rock. Along's expression was unchanged while Evan was still stunned, not yet back to his senses. He unconsciously muttered in awe, "Damn, I can't believe it." After waiting for the electrical currents below the cliff to dissipate, the two of them made their way down. Evan pestered Along the entire way, asking, "Have you been hiding your true power this whole time?" Along just gave a flat, perfunctory reply, "Of course not." Evan, unconvinced, pressed him again. "What do you mean? In my 15 years as a mercenary, I've never seen anything like this. Are you telling me that was really just level 2 magic?" But all he got back were the two words, "That's right." Along's bland reply left him speechless and exasperated. Contrary to his cold, emotionless expression, Along's mind was racing with countless questions. "I didn't expect this either. It wasn't this strong in the game. If I remember correctly, in Sai Chadalia's turn-based combat system, magic could be enhanced with sigils, or an incantation each turn. A turn-based combat system. With each victory after completing a battle, the character in the virtual world would get a 10% attack power boost. And after that battle just now with those giant stone creatures. This time, the chain lightning spell used 4 sigils and an incantation. It was amplified over 5 turns. The more he thought about it, the more Along unconsciously recalled every technique he used in the last fight. He had used a total of 4 techniques. The accumulated lightning blades were amplified simultaneously, forming a suitable configuration for a wide-area lightning spell. In exchange for the restriction of having to use a sigil and incantation for each spell, I received something else in return. As he thought of this, Along vaguely imagined a voice chanting in his head. Strange words. "O forgotten mortal, you who still remember the sigils and mysteries of the great god, I thank you for inheriting his will." With that thought, he came to a conclusion. That must be why the magic was amplified so many times over. His mind was a mess of thoughts the entire way out. Even so, the power of this level 2 magic is still excessive. The result far exceeded my expectations to the point that even I was surprised. Evan, walking behind him, finally let out a sigh of relief, remarking, "We finally made it out." Exhausted, he sat down on a stone ledge, leaning against the cliff wall and muttering complaints. This is even more tiring than fighting. His weariness made Evan sulky, as if he were scolding him. He asked Along, who in the world would come up with a horrible place like this? Along didn't answer. He glanced around once again, lost in thought. Recalling, the Whispering Labyrinth has another name, according to information found online. It spread throughout the community via shared map settings and guidebooks. There was a lot of buzz about this mysterious labyrinth on social media. What is Palin's Labyrinth? Everyone keeps saying Palin, but what the hell is it? The Whispering Labyrinth. A mid-level grinding area in the game. According to the director, that labyrinth has an owner. You could train there endlessly if you skipped the rewards. So when did it start being called Palin's Labyrinth? This question bothered Along endlessly. Suddenly he unconsciously blurted out the question, so since when did it start being called Palin's Labyrinth? Evan, who only half heard him, didn't understand and asked again. Sorry, what did you just say? Along didn't repeat himself. He pulled Evan up, changing the subject. Let's head back east. After these past 3 grueling weeks, there's something I want to do when we get back. Evan couldn't help but sigh in exasperation. What, you're more hard-working than I thought. As he pulled Evan along, Along thought to himself again. Choosing a sigil of the same element as the spell increases its power, while choosing the right incantation enhances its properties. That's how the game worked. But unlike the game where the visuals didn't change and only the attack stats increased, a player would get a 10% attack power boost. But from the recent battle, Along noticed that this time each sigil transformed the spell and each incantation created a distinct change. Thinking about this, Along wondered to himself. Even though it was just a magic technique, was my control over mana refined enough to perceive those transformations? Breaking free from his tangled thoughts, Along finally relaxed and told himself, when my mana recovers, I'll have to test it again. In any case, everything turned out fine in the end. In the darkness of the deep forest, unknown to Along and Evan, Ren, completely covered by a cloak, hid in the shadows waiting for them to leave. Only then did she raise her head and nimbly leap from one cliff to another. Entering the labyrinth, she stopped. Ren looked at the large stone slab before her, densely carved with glowing raised letters. In any case, everything turned out fine in the end. And these letters with their distinct characters, she immediately recognized them as the script of the Alanet Empire. Ren pulled down her hood and translated the strange inscription. It read, for a friend who was about to be left all alone. Sword St. Palin stood firm. Then she gently touched the glowing raised letters. Vivid images flashed through Ren's mind. He repelled the invasion of the Dark Ones and defeated Ao Akan Ao, the devourer of his people's hearts. The Radiant Emperor. The great Palin, forever etched in the hearts of his people, divine sword in hand, bravely fighting a giant vicious dragon. Then the reel of images shifted to a scene of herself. Ren was floating in the air, surrounded by flying books. A voice echoed in her head, always reminding her, I know all, for I was born with a great mission in the ancient library. As Ren returned to reality, she remembered standing on the cliff looking down at Along. It dawned on her. That's right. Balin was the one who created it. I already knew Queen Bladia was different from the person recorded in the history books, so I suspected something extraordinary was going on. Images of Queen Bladia, Emperor Balin, and Along kept swirling in her head. Ren couldn't stop the train of thought in her mind. Come to think of it, even the Great Moon once called Balin a friend worthy of respect. What's more, the incantation he whispered doesn't even exist in any records of the ancient library. She recalled the recent battle between Along and those giants. The spells he used were what puzzled Ren the most. She was incredibly curious. Who exactly was that man? When she came out of the labyrinth, Ren's attitude had changed slightly. Shy and embarrassed, she mumbled, Everything the Crimson Moon said was true. I'm so ashamed for blindly following orders. But then her expression immediately returned to its usual coldness. Half asking, half stating, so you've come. She looked up at the person on the tree branch and asked, Did you get the information? Ren Doser replied coldly. The man in black is dead. His neck was suddenly twisted twice in midair, and that was Along's handiwork. After hearing this, Ren said curtly, I will have to report this so it can be handled appropriately. In the dead of night, under a dim moon hanging high above the dense forest canopy, 2 figures flew off into the air. Meanwhile, at Count Zenonia's mansion, Kalia was sitting on the sofa in her room, gently sipping a cup of tea. With a vacant gaze, she said faintly, So, it wasn't just a rumor. Kalia mused, unconsciously thinking of Along. A silent judgment formed in her mind. His eyes are so cold and emotionless, like a bottomless abyss. She sarcastically asked herself, Popular, you say? Then she leaned back on the sofa, answering her own question. Yes, Count Zenonia is both powerful and famous. But then Kalia's sharp eyes darkened. She let out an observation. But it's strange that someone like me, who rarely socializes, is the one everyone considers to be popular. With that, Kalia stood up slowly. She walked toward the man sitting at the desk and asked with a smile, Isn't that strange? Father? At her voice, the man stopped his writing hand. He turned to look at her. He watched Kalia seriously as she continued, Because you are the Count. Kalia drew closer to her father, a cold smile forming on her lips. Then she snapped her fingers. In the man's eyes, Kalia's reflection convulsed and rolled back and forth. He slumped over powerlessly, his hand letting go of the quill. Seeing this, Kalia was immensely satisfied. She smiled triumphant and arrogant. No one would ever suspect that I'm the one truly running this family while father pretends to be a fool. How could they possibly find out? She remembered the party, how Along had no idea the distant observer was her arrangement. He had even kindly warned her that many eyes were watching. At that moment, Kalia had thought to herself with amusement, "It seems even the spy I planted has been discovered." Just then a guard rushed in frantically calling out, "Lady Kalia!" Kalia leaned against the wall and asked him, "What is it?" The guard immediately replied, "Please return to your room at once, my lady." Kalia followed the guard back to her room. The moment she opened the door, she was greeted by the sight of the spy's blood-soaked body dead and slumped against the wall. The guard reported cautiously to Kalia, "It seems the seal wasn't activated, which means he hasn't revealed any secrets." Kalia's face grew stern. "He deliberately placed it in my room," she said. She paused, leaving the sentence hanging. A few seconds later, Kalia let out a self-mocking laugh and asked, "How did they figure this out?" "From the very moment we met, he struck my greatest weakness." "Didn't he?" Kalia's smile wasn't a smile at all. Her face was now hideously contorted with anger. Meanwhile, with Evan and Along, the two of them were dozing off in the carriage on their way back. Evan's snoring was so loud that Along woke up in a daze. He dug at his ear, then started to drift off again. The scene changes. Evening at the territory of the ducal house of Antia. Loria sat in her carriage, terrified. He really is no ordinary person. She remembered the nobleman of the underworld, his eyes as cold as her father's. This is the kind of person you must never make an enemy of. Loria thought sadly of the moment Along had coldly turned away. He was my last lifeline. She was filled with disappointment, but I doubt he'd accept a deal with such a huge loss. Just then, Loria remembered her siblings, their assets and power all stolen by their most despicable brothers. The first son, Team Malinen. The first daughter, Malinen. The second daughter, Perrin. The second son, Kik. Looking back at herself, she thought, "Because I have nothing left." Loria looked at the luxurious building before her, so familiar, yet so strange. To this day, I've only managed to survive by taking advantage of father's pity and love. But what am I supposed to do from now on? Eventually, she would have to enter this cold, bleak building. Suddenly, a loud voice called out, "Lady Loria, the young miss has returned." Two maids ran over from a distance, looking worried. "My lady, Lady Perrin, and the young master? They're dead." Hearing this, Loria's face paled. What? The image of those two flashed through her mind. The kind of people who would even stab their own family members. Did they do it themselves? That's impossible, Loria asked softly. Then what about my brother Timolin and my sister Melina? Immediately a blood-curdling scream rang out. The servants rushed toward the sound and everyone froze in horror. Inside, those two were stabbing each other with swords. Young Master Timolin, Lady Melina. The scene descended into chaos. Loria stood there stunned, wondering, what is happening? They didn't know that on the roof of the building a small figure was departing as fast as a flash of lightning. Radon smiled coldly. Mission complete. Then the figure leaped away, vanishing without a trace. As the servants ran around in a panic, Loria's face filled with horror and she muttered, "What on earth?" She remembered what Along had said. He had turned back and spoken a cryptic phrase, "Something good will happen." Along's terrifying expression from that moment appeared in her mind, hiding in the shadows, waiting for his chance, concealing his claws to seize the position. The true puppet master behind the county. At this she trembled with fear. Is that what you meant? Just like him, in a single night I became the sole heir to the duchy. After a moment, Loria let out a soft sigh. She wondered to herself, just what kind of demon have I made a pact with? How much more absurd can this get? But there's no turning back now. Loria immediately turned and walked away. What would happen if I betrayed him? There have already been too many precedents. She made up her mind. I have no choice but to keep walking the path I've chosen. Time skips to 2 months later at Along's mansion. A man approached him respectfully. "I have come on the orders of Duke Antia." Hearing that, he was surprised. Duke Antia, Evan standing beside him, also peeked over. Whoa! Inside the box was a bottle of wine. It looked incredibly rare. This vintage wine. I've heard each bottle costs several thousand gold coins. I can't believe I'm seeing one in person. Next to it was a letter. Along was stunned. To Loria Antia. Not the Duke, but Loria. The youngest daughter prepared this. Why would she send this to me? I'm on the run, struggling to survive like this. He turned and asked the man, "Is this really for me?" The man bowed his head and replied, "Yes. The Duke personally prepared it and ordered me to deliver it directly into your hands." Huh. Hearing this, Along was suddenly startled. The Duke himself. Wait a minute. Does that mean Loria, the youngest daughter, the one I never would have expected, has become Duke Antia? At that moment, she was focused on the paperwork on her desk. After a while, Loria stretched and said, 2 months went by so fast. She couldn't help but remember. After the funeral for my father who passed away from illness, I held the succession ceremony and became the Duke. Loria stood up, reflecting. At first, I couldn't even step into this office. She still couldn't forget that horrifying night. Although it was the sudden death of my siblings, I managed to avoid all suspicion. At the time, Loria was still deeply anxious, but she had the alibi of the ball. At the time of the incident, even my secret organization had been eliminated by my siblings, so when I returned to the mansion, that should have been the day I was in the most danger. I was truly in a state of having lost all my power. Loria couldn't help but feel flustered and frightened. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I was stunned. Did he take advantage of even this situation? She imagined the scene in her mind. On the surface, he had coldly refused, but afterward he handled everything perfectly. Remembering it still left Loria bewildered. Just how many steps ahead was he thinking, because I was afraid of bothering anyone? I didn't even send out a notice for the funeral. And so she walked alone through the magnificent mansion. It's clear that he needs Antia for some kind of plan. That must be why he sought me out. As Loria walked, she thought, even though I've unified all the organizations under Antia, it's still no match for the power he's hiding. She speculated silently. That means there's something else he wants from me. The image of Along, a kingpin of the underworld, appeared in her mind. You built your power through business alone. If it's something he doesn't have, but I do. He seemed to transform in her eyes, becoming even darker, manipulating politics from the shadows. The reputation of Antia. Then Loria looked up at the portrait hanging on the wall. But for now, I must focus on the tasks at hand. She turned around to stand before the Duke's portrait. Because my benefactor will be in touch soon. Loria smiled faintly. I hope my thank you gift was to your liking. On the other side, the man bowed and left the room. Well then, Duke, I shall take my leave. Along, however, was still struggling to understand. Loria was threatened with assassination. And now she's the Duke. What is going on? Something's not right. Evan beside him also tilted his head, curious about the strange thing that was happening. The time shifts to a few months after winter, 5 years before the original story began. As Along was walking, someone suddenly called out, "Young Master!" Evan ran over and asked, "Young Master!" "Ah, no. You are a count now, aren't you?" He replied. "The inheritance ceremony hasn't happened yet, but since the new year has come, I can use the title." In his heart, Along felt frustrated. His wonderful life plan never included becoming a count. Sekidin's wonderful rule for living was to conquer Redaman, not getting involved in the fight for succession, traveling American style. But he didn't dwell on it too much. He had gotten used to it. So I might as well enjoy the benefits of being a Gorabel noble to the fullest. It's better than I thought. Just then, Evan handed him a letter. "This is a letter from Utia, sir." As he walked into the room, Along asked, "By the way, is there any information on Leo's assassins yet?" He replied, "Nothing definite yet, sir. The Information Guild is investigating thoroughly. For now, we should just wait and see, sir." Afterwards, they sat down at a table. Evan spoke up, asking, "So what is your objective, sir?" "It can't be for revenge, can it?" He thought to himself. "The things that are gradually changing from the game must be the butterfly effect I caused." Along spoke. "It's just to prepare for any unexpected situations." Evan suddenly burst out laughing, exclaiming, "Just now you looked very much like a count, sir." Hearing that, he sighed. Let's just say so. Along looked at the letter, curious. "I wonder what the contents are this time." The contents of the letter appeared. "Are you well, sir? We are all as healthy as ever. Everyone is engrossed in their own hobbies. Especially Chedelia's puppet show, which has reached a truly impressive level. The others are having a lot of fun, too. Xiaolong is absorbed in playing games with his friends. As for the other members, Ren still quietly reads books these days, but she's often making something. And Radan has taken a liking to landscape decoration. After reading the letter, Along smiled gently. The daily life at the orphanage with the monthly letters I've grown used to exchanging warms my heart more and more. Even though I've never seen their faces watching these kids grow up, thanks to my sponsorship naturally brings a fatherly smile to my face. And so he suddenly spoke up and asked Evan, "By the way, the 5 calamities—" "No. How old are those kids now?" Hearing this, he asked, curiously, "Why do you ask, sir?" Evan then answered, "It's almost time for them to go out into society. Some have already left the orphanage early. Most of the children you personally ordered to be found are around that age, sir." Hearing this, the innocent image he had of them in his mind seemed to shatter a little. He couldn't help but recall the image from that time. "Thank you for raising us, sir. From the 5 calamities." Along immediately thought, that's right, that's what it was. I'll have to let them out into the world eventually. Hearing this, Evan asked again, "Really, sir? Didn't you intentionally gather these frail children?" Along calmly replied, "There's no particular reason. They've grown up. They have to think about their futures." In his heart, however, he thought differently. They've been cared for, so they won't awaken into evil. So they should be able to take care of themselves, right? Hearing that, he remarked, "It seems they are all healthy now." That's right. Along began to think. In every boss fight, the narration gave a brief overview of their abilities. Yutia has a talent for faith. Next is that gloomy kid Dare, who has a talent for swordsmanship. Then there's Ren, who has a talent for research. Next is the Beastkin girl Cello with a talent for combat. And Radan, who has a talent for being an apostle. Along suddenly picked up a box. If I place them in the right positions, wouldn't they be capable of securing a place for themselves? He thought of those brats and mused, "Since I'm doing this anyway, I'll give each of them a gift. They'll probably like it, right? After all, I did tell them I'd give them something someday." A while later, it was late afternoon. The sunset glowed upon the mansion. Along sat at his desk and stretched. "All done?" Evan, who still had drool on his mouth, ran off saying, "In that case, I'll be going." Along watched him go, thinking to himself, "Later on, if everything goes smoothly, I wonder if I'll receive even a small share of the profits." At that moment, small birds flew peacefully across the sky. My children take these letters and venture out into the wider world. But for the children of Along, those words were a command. With a cold expression, Yutia spoke. "The directives have arrived. This time they were sent to each of us individually. All 5 held their own letters. Duo remained calm and collected as he read his while Sao Lang jumped for joy at the sight of the letter. There, they no longer had the small, childlike appearances of their past. Ren smiled gently. Radan said not a word, and Yutia lowered her gaze, staring intently at the letter. Her expression was unreadable. Holding several letters in her hand, Yutia said calmly, "But before we do anything, we should read through the previous letters. His orders require a very high level of understanding." Hearing this, Sao Lang grew excited. "We can actually read them. Before only you were allowed to read them," Yutia replied in her usual level tone. "The fact that he sent orders to each of us individually means he has decided it's time for everyone to see." The letter opened. Yutia began to read, "How have you been lately? It seems you have many talented friends. If you need anything, just let me know." Sao Lang looked at the letter and scratched his cheek, a little confused. Is this an order? After reading for a moment, Ren also found it strange. This looks more like everyday pleasantries. Hearing them, Yutia scoffed. Exactly. He has been disguising his orders as normal conversations from the very beginning. All right, look here. She analyzed the letter for them. This was the first order after the greeting letter. It reads, "Yutia, are you? Well, I am fine. Today, brother number 2 used me as a chair. Isn't that funny? I'd like to send you letters from time to time. Please reply if you're okay with that." And the child I sent this time, Yutia analyzed. He's designating a target for elimination, assigning the mission, and telling us to report back afterward. The letter continued, "Thank you for your reply. I hope you can let me know what happens at the orphanage each month. I'm leaving that place in your hands. You'll all be fine as long as you're together." Yutia continued to explain the hidden command in the letter. "This is when he entrusted Lam Nguit to me, as you can all see. He personally selected all of you." She pointed to each part to analyze it. Everyone around her stared with wide-eyed astonishment. Listening to Yutia Duo showed that he understood. "I see. It's to prevent information leaks, right?" "I remember my first order," she said with a smile. "It was just like this. You must clearly understand the orders and carry out the missions." Duo suddenly proposed an idea. Then wouldn't it be better to meet with him directly or use a magical communication device? Radan agreed with him. He has a point. If the problem is information leaks, why use letters? Suddenly, Utia's attitude changed. Her expression darkened. Her red eyes flashed with a cold light. I hope you haven't forgotten that. All we need to do is follow orders. Seeing Utia's unwavering loyalty, Duo was speechless. Such firm, blind faith. I haven't forgotten. Suddenly, Sao Lang held his paper up high. He shouted with excitement. Then let's read the orders. In the brightly lit room, they gathered in a circle to read the orders sent to each of them. Duo read his mission aloud. He's telling me to go to Caliburn, the Kingdom of Knights. Sao Lang sighed in frustration. Thuk dia, but I don't like deserts. Radan added, and I'm going to Russes, the city of entertainment. Ren was assigned to another area. He told me to go to Latania, the labyrinth city. Utia's eyes suddenly became ecstatic. She clutched the order in her hands with a look of rapture. The holy nation of Rosario. Everything everyone needs to do is written in the letters. Right, holding the order, Duo said in a toneless voice. I don't know the reason, but he told me to become a knight. Sao Lang added cheerfully. He also said not to worry, because the patronage will continue. Ren smiled and added, he also told us the location of the gifts. Radan also seemed interested. Whatever they are, we'll find out as soon as we get there. Seeing that they understood their orders, Utia instructed, very good. But remember, unless he says it first, you are absolutely forbidden from mentioning the name Lam Nguit. Utia's gaze suddenly turned icy. Her sharp, cold eyes stared at them. The group quickly followed their orders and went their separate ways. Dressed in black cloaks, they departed from the mansion. 3 months later. In a room piled high with books, Along was sitting in his study. As I thought, there's nothing here about changes in magic or incantations. Looks like I'll have to test it myself. Suddenly, he turned and asked Evan. That reminds me, how is the information gathering going on? The one who killed Leo Model. Evan reported that the Intelligence Guild said they still hadn't found anything. Hearing this, A. Long was a little disappointed. Is that so? He rested his chin on his hand, thinking, looks like the butterfly effect has gotten way out of my control. This is what I get for saving the lives of the 5 great sins. Along recalled the cold Duchess Loria. Even Loria, who was supposed to die in the original story, had become Duchess Antia, expanding her power and influence at an astonishing rate in the underworld. The more he thought about it, the darker his expression grew. Along put down his book and ordered Evan, stop the investigation into the assassins. Evan was taken aback by his order. Huh, really? Along thought to himself, this is clearly a situation where ignorance is bliss. In this world's setting, practically nothing can escape the Intelligence Guild's network. If I keep digging into things I shouldn't. The more he thought, the more he trembled, his face suddenly turning pale. The only result is that, if a precaution for an unexpected situation leads to death, then it's all meaningless. To protect himself, A. Long had no other choice. After all, secret organizations like that won't harm me. As long as I don't interfere in their affairs, there's no reason for them to attack unless I approach them first. A. Long then said to Evan, at this rate, there's no point in continuing. Although he didn't understand his master's intentions, Evan agreed. All right, I'll tell them to stop the investigation. Then Evan suddenly remembered something and quickly told A. Long, oh right, there's another piece of news. Apparently recently, Der has been knighted in Caliban. After hearing this, A. Long, though his face remained emotionless, offered congratulations out of politeness. Is that so good for him? 3 months later, Evan ran to find Count A. Long, his hands full of snacks. Seeing how multi-talented Evan was, he quietly praised him. He really is talented, isn't he? He then reported some news to A. Long. I heard he's already formed his own knight order. Along was shocked by the news. He what? He must be at least an expert level or higher by now. Along recalled the ranks of knights in this world. Sword master, sword expert, swordsman. The more he thought, the more impressed he became. It hasn't even been that long since he was first knighted, has it? Evan added. That's what everyone is talking about. They're saying the world will witness the 5th great knight in less than 15 years. Along suddenly recalled something. Speaking of great knights, do you mean the ones they call the Swords of Caliban? Is that right? Evan confirmed. Yes, that's them. He's truly talented. Along suddenly felt a sense of accomplishment. I'm quite proud of him. Evan said while chewing. Caliban must be buzzing about this. 6 months later, in a magnificent castle, Along was absorbed in his work. It's been a year since the 5 great sins left the orphanage, and just as I was getting used to my work as a count, suddenly Evan entered to report. "My Lord Count, I've just heard some breaking news." Along didn't stop his work as Evan continued speaking. "It seems Dur has become one of the swords of Caliban." The next piece of news he delivered was like a lightning bolt to Along, causing him to drop the pen in his hand, and has become the 5th great knight. Along found this hard to believe and quickly asked, "But only a sword master can become a great knight, right?" He recalled what he knew about becoming a knight in this place. A sword master of Psychedelia is a superhuman who has surpassed Sword Key and unlocked a unique ability called a manifestation, Along asked Evan again. "And you're telling me that Dur is already a sword master?" Evan corrected him. "More accurately, he's on the verge of becoming one. He hasn't created his own manifestation yet." Evan then recounted the process of Dur's knighthood. "But the nation has granted him the title of Great Knight anyway, not only because he won a duel against the 4th sword, but also because Caliburn lost a great knight to the northern barbarians." Hearing his words, Along was startled as he remembered. "That's right. They've been at war for over a decade now." Evan scratched his head, finding it hard to believe himself. It takes 15 years just to sense and control mana, and the manifestation process requires at least several decades. He recalled the history of the Empire. The first sword was 32 years old when he became the youngest great knight in history. The history of the heroic knight was recalled. Program Y has been accepted as a temporary teammate. It will be excluded after the chapter ends. He held a sword since he was 5. You have to have some faith he'd become the youngest swordmaster in history. Along thought to himself, that's right. Dare is unbelievably strong. But even with all his talent, it took that guy more than 25 years. And yet a kid with no prior knowledge of swordsmanship has become a great knight. Suddenly a thought occurred to him. Wait a minute. If he's only waiting for his manifestation, does that mean he'll become a swordmaster soon? This thought made Along unable to contain his joy. He blurted out, "I might be able to ride his coattails sooner than I thought." Evan nodded in agreement. Along stared at the messy pile of books on his desk and was suddenly lost in thought. Or maybe not. Could it be impossible? Evan quickly waved his hands dismissively. No way he wouldn't do that. But Along pointed out a simple fact, taking out the only letter tucked inside a book. "I mean, I've only gotten letters from Utia." He read Utia's letter. Even after she arrived in the Holy Kingdom, the letters she sent regularly always contained news about the other great sins she grew up with. It seems they're still in contact with each other. Along felt a little sense of loss, even though they had never met him before. At least they could have thanked me for the gift. I feel a bit guilty. He slapped his face hard to snap himself out of it. Evan looked at him horrified. Right, let's get back to the matter at hand. I was already grateful enough that they didn't destroy the kingdom after awakening as the 5 great sins. The two stood side by side at a sunny window. Along spoke in a reluctant tone. As long as they're living well, then I'm happy. Twilight over the capital of Caliban. In the central district stood the mansion of a high-ranking noble. This was the grand estate where the famed Eclipse Knight Order resided. At this moment, countless swordsmen were training inside. Du, clad in armor, stood proudly above, observing the situation. He was introduced as Du, captain of the Eclipse Knight Order, the youngest Grand Knight. Du looked down from above at the knights below with a cold gaze. Suddenly, a girl walking below noticed his presence. The purple-haired girl waved at him. Seeing this, he smiled and waved back. But suddenly, Du's expression darkened. He recalled with sadness, "It's been a whole year. But when I think back on it, I still feel ashamed that I lost everything to those dark beings." That horrific image replayed endlessly in his mind. Painful childhood memories flooded back. And all I have left is this uncontrollable rage. The image of his sister enveloped by darkness slowly slipping from his grasp. Du was held back by the darkness, the distance between him and his sister growing ever wider, and the hatred swelled within him. Memories of his miserable wandering childhood returned. Though drowning in a sea of misery, he still clutched his sister's hair clip tightly in his hand. Du's true thoughts were slowly revealed. The fact that Great Moon saved my life isn't a good enough reason for me to swear loyalty to him. But because he promised that I could get my revenge with my own hands, I have followed his orders. under the name Blue Moon from that moment on. He began to dedicate his life to Blue Moon. Working as a part of Blue Moon meant undergoing many dangerous missions and training sessions where death was always a possibility. But for the sake of revenge, Du no longer cared. However, I couldn't care less about my own safety. Memories flooded his mind like a torrent. For several years, I carried out missions that would become the foundation for our fight against the dark beings, and very soon after, and for the first time, I received a private order. Du was completely shocked to receive a secret order. "This is so sudden. What's this?" In the letter Along had revealed. "A small hotel in southern Caliban. I've left a gift there. Go and take a look." But Du didn't pay it much mind. That gift doesn't really interest me. Even so, he still went to the location Along had mentioned. Du was a little curious. What could possibly be here? When he opened the door, the scene inside left him utterly stunned. Seeing the familiar figure of his younger sister Do rushed towards her, his hand reached out wanting to touch her. The gift from Great Moon was the family I thought I had lost forever. Du hugged the little girl tightly, collapsing to the ground in joy and emotion. She hugged him back, also moved to tears. Something more precious than my own life. Du was now sobbing uncontrollably. Reunited, the two held each other tightly in happiness. Du still couldn't believe his eyes. My sister, the one I thought was dead, is still alive. Only when their emotions subsided did they gently pull apart. He asked in a trembling voice, "Silly, what happened after I lost you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, Silly gently squeezed Du's hand to reassure him. His other hand gently wiped away, the tears still lingering on his little sister's eyelashes. The two of them then went back inside the house, and they sat at a table to continue their talk. Silly clutched the cup in her hands and slowly began her story. After those people took me away in the darkness, I had to wait for my turn for a long, long time. Back then, she was imprisoned in a dark dungeon. Around her were countless other cells where the captives huddled together in desperate silence. I don't know how long it had been, Silly recalled, and when it was my turn to be killed. She was the last one standing. On the walls and at her feet were blood-soaked bodies. Silly let out a desperate scream. Her shawl was torn off. A ray of light shone in. Someone pulled her by the hand. I was able to escape with that light and survive, and a few years later, when I was about to be sold to a slave trader, despair surrounded me once again. A giant hand suddenly grabbed hold of her. At that very moment, flashes from a sword blade swept past. A figure appeared, swinging a sword and slicing that hand to pieces. The person quickly stood in front of Silly to shield her. She remembered, a mercenary named Evan saved me. Silly walked over and opened a cabinet. After that, I received precious medicine from a patron. She picked up a letter on which a message from Along Play Sow was written. I will continue to send medicine and support. You will be safe under the name of Play Sow. Also, do not worry about your brother. Silly was full of gratitude. I'm so grateful for everything he did for me. Upon learning this, Du was stunned. He used his own name to protect you. How could Great Moon have possibly known about this? He quietly held his arm, his heart full of doubt. I never told anyone about my family, and Yuta only realized that the black sheep had captured you. So how? Du suddenly remembered what Yuta once said, he knows everything. It was as if everything clicked into place in his mind. The pieces began to connect. All of my questions fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, and then vanished. Back then, I couldn't understand the concern of Utia. She said something I couldn't understand. A sword can't think for itself, can it? It wasn't until this very moment that Dare finally understood. He was the foolish one all along. Good things will come. That's what Along had once said. Thinking back on it now after 4 hours, he finally understood what that man meant. That man knew everything. And he had hinted that the child would have to survive on his own. A chill ran down his spine. He looked over at Silly, who was just staring blankly. She tilted her head in confusion. Brother! He snapped out of it and gently stroked her head, but his mind was still racing. His sword had dared to act on its own, yet he still chose to be generous and merciful. And yet all that time, Dare had thought he was being controlled by him, all while nursing his own resentment and plotting revenge. He sat down at the table, and Silly brought over a tray of hot food. Looking at the radiant smile on his sister's face, Dare suddenly realized that his family's survival was a priceless gift. Yuta's cold voice echoed in his memory. "You'll soon realize it too. Why I follow that man." He understood now. She wasn't just some fanatic, nor did she trust that man blindly, and that letter. It had advised Dare to go to California and become a knight. He told himself that he had to repay him. His mission was to become the leader in California, a great knight, and establish his own order of knights, gathering the best swordsmen. That conviction was like sunlight shining on his dark world. Snapping out of his reverie, one of his subordinates stepped forward to report, "Captain, it's time." He moved onto a high platform. Below, the order of knights stood in solemn, perfect rows under the moonlight, each of their faces looking sharp and defined. Their eyes were resolute. Dare told himself, "This expedition will be the first stepping stone for the eclipse. I don't care what hardships may come." He gently caressed the surface of the purple sword sheath in his hand. The moonlight glinted off the metal. Then under that dim light, Dare coldly drew his sword, his aura brimming with spirit. "I will wait for the day that I can offer up my gratitude along with a worthy repayment that will please him. I must prove it." Under the moon, on a day when the sky was white with falling snow, the Eclipse Order set out on its expedition to fight against the barbarian tribes. Meanwhile, at the Count's residence, Along leaned against a wall, sighing contentedly. "It's so peaceful. Perhaps it's because all my children have finally grown up." Suddenly, a gust of wind swept by, flipping the pages of his book and sending his notes scattering. He hurriedly tried to catch them. "Oh, they're all flying away." Along returned to his unfinished work. Let's see. After returning from the labyrinth, I focused my research on keywords. While writing, he suddenly stopped his pen and wondered, "Why am I even writing in cursive? I'll write more neatly from now on." Along nodded. "Much better." His reports were complete. On the page, he focused on analyzing the keywords, noting that each one would cause a different kind of transformation. Along circled the word shrink. This one reinforces a flaw within the magic. To be more specific, shrink reinforces the inherent flaw within each completed spell. It causes its range to expand. Additionally, shrink also has the effect of breaking the form and altering the projected object, a transformation that changes its state. This is proven through execution. It will repel. It will break the form, affecting the transformation of the projected object. Regarding Azure Light, he noted reinforces parallel magic such as lightning magic. When executed, it swirls into a large sphere discharging rays of electric light from its sides. Diffraction has two major effects, piercing and critical. Specifically, diffraction grants the ability to pierce, which is synonymous with a critical effect increasing the probability of a kill. And it is especially important in the rules of keywords. If this is broken, the spell will fail. At the same time, there are a few notes: do not use incompatible keywords, do not repeat the same word, and use a maximum of 4 words. Along scratched his head with his pen as he scanned his mana core. "I can only use 1 spell per day, so it's taken me a very long time to figure out just this much." He recalled his earlier days of research. According to the lore of this world, the hand seals and keywords of Babylonia were long forgotten, so there was no information about them at all. There weren't any records of where they were written down. Along had read countless books, but he couldn't find anything. In the end, I had to research it all myself, and I found it to be quite interesting, even though I only learned magic for self-defense. At that, he stood up. He walked out into an empty patch in the garden, raised his hand, and shot out sparks of lightning. "All right, time to see the results of 2 months of experimentation." With one hand, Along held up the index finger of the other. From that finger, even more lightning condensed and spread into the air. The bolts slowly coiled and then condensed at a single point in midair. He focused intensely, eliminating the focal point of the manosphere and creating an imbalance to activate the lightning. This weak and useless magic is fixed. Before long, a sphere appeared in the air, spinning continuously. Along silently chanted an incantation, compressing the sphere. It suddenly shrank from its large size, but its power remained immense. He continued to apply his research by chanting keywords. Break. It began to form a specific purpose. March Blossom. The lightning from Along's hand gradually turned azure. It grew more intense. From a single sphere, it developed into something like a great tree trunk with bolts of lightning spreading out like branches. He looked at the result of his test before him. He couldn't help but be impressed. "So the order matters too, huh?" Along mumbled, because when I used brake first it failed. Before he could finish, a shout cut through his thoughts. No way! Startled, he immediately spun around. Two people were standing there. He had no idea how long they'd been watching. Kalia's face was pale and filled with disbelief. Primordial magic. Along looked at her in surprise. What? Why is Kalia here? The man beside her was trembling. Using origin magic? That means he's reached the level of a 7th circle mage. Hearing that, a corner of Along's mouth twitched. Me. In the reception room of Count Palladio's mansion, Kalia and Bianco sat in silence, waiting for Along. As she waited, Kalia couldn't help but feel tense, her mind racing with anxious thoughts. I have two clear reasons for coming here. First, to confirm the intentions of Count Pallatio, the one holding the trump card that could inflict heavy damage on Zenonia. After all, Kalia herself is now the primary operator of Zenonia. Her father is just a puppet, and she's the one pulling the strings. Therefore, determining Along's intentions is now her top priority. Second, to investigate the level of the organization protecting him, the organization that helped him manipulate Pallatio. Although this reason isn't as critical, Kalia is genuinely curious about which mysterious organization helped Along achieve the success he has today. But instead, what I found out was, I never thought I'd see this arrogant mage trembling in fear. That's right, right at this moment. Bianco, sitting beside her, was shaking so violently he couldn't even sit still. Bianco, a 5th circle mage exiled from the magic tower for his inhumane experiments. He could easily annihilate an entire division of soldiers, yet he still maintains an arrogant attitude towards me, even though I've been his longtime patron. A man who is both intelligent and cold-blooded. To think that someone who has successfully carried out such wicked deeds is now trembling, his face ashen and covered in sweat. Kalia looked at him in disbelief, thinking to herself, I can feel his fear. I've never seen him like this before. Meanwhile, a nagging question troubled her. Was that really origin magic just now? Just then, the sound of the door opening and a deep voice cut through her thoughts. Well? Along slowly walked into the room, stopping in front of Kalia and Bianco. He asked coolly, What brings you to this domain? Kalia sat up straight, speaking cautiously and formally. My apologies for the sudden visit. I wanted to meet you so much that... Before she could finish her sentence, Along cut her off. Politely, he said, I won't blame you, miss. He crossed his arms, looking at her seriously. His voice, though calm, was firm. However, let me make one thing clear. What I just used was not origin magic. If you truly wish to classify my magical ability, I'm only at the 2nd circle level. He didn't hide anything, getting straight to the point. Pausing for a beat, he looked over at Bianco and said confidently, The mage beside you must have realized it. That magic has no effect whatsoever. But inwardly he thought with a sense of regret, Unfortunately, that magic can't be used for offense or defense. Hearing his words, Kalia and Bianco coincidentally had the same thought. What does he mean? As if sensing something from him, Bianco immediately sent Kalia a grave telepathic message. Keep your mouth shut about what you just saw. Hearing this, Kalia tensed up. Bianco, trembling and stammering, sincerely apologized to Along. You are correct. It seems I was mistaken. Kalia looked at him confused and bewildered, thinking suspiciously, Bianco is being polite. Along gave a slight nod, letting the matter go. Hearing him say that, Along inwardly sighed in relief. He didn't make things difficult for them and said frankly, Good. Now that the misunderstanding is cleared up, let's get to the main point. Kalia hesitated for a long moment before saying tactfully, I thought I should pay you a visit since I'm in the area on business. Along asked calmly again, You don't have a particular reason then? Kalia lied, No. Along wearily lowered his eyes, saying implicitly, What a pity. I have things to do, so I can't sit here for long. Being an intelligent woman, Kalia quickly stood up, took a deep breath, and said politely, I understand. Thank you for taking the time to see me. We'll be leaving now. Along leaned back in his chair, his voice cool as he made a half-joking, half-serious suggestion. If you need someone to talk to, I recommend you meet with Duchess Antia. Yes, I think you two will get along. As he said this, he looked directly at Kalia. Her expression soured slightly. She understood his words were not just an idle comment. After a few seconds of silence, she bowed. Yes, sir. Since you've said so, I will pay her a visit. Both Along and Evan walked them to the door to see them off. Watching the luxurious carriage depart, Evan asked. Along curiously, why would someone from House Zenonia, a declining family from the West, come here? Along answered honestly, I don't know. I can't even begin to imagine the reason. But deep down he knew this was going to be troublesome. If the false rumor about him using origin magic spreads, those who crave a challenge against the strong will start seeking him out for a fight. And this world is a dark fantasy after all. Just thinking about it, he could already picture evil forces gathering to target him. Turning to go back inside, Along walked and thought with concern.
I hope she got my meaning. Zenonia would never go see Antia.
The one they're competing with in the underworld. At the same time, he silently prayed, just as long as they don't come looking for me, I'll be fine. Under a clear blue sky and a carriage on its way back, Kalia's voice could be faintly heard from outside. Was what Count Palladio used really origin magic? She asked this while sitting upright, seriously awaiting Bianco's answer. Bianco, who still hadn't recovered his composure, hesitated and replied, No, it wasn't. Hearing that, Kalia pressed on, Then what was with your reaction back there? When asked about that matter, Bianco trembled. He gravely explained that primordial magic is a type of magic that writes its own laws upon the veil of absolute immutable principles. It is reserved only for mages who have reached the absolute peak. However, what the Count uses is different. As you requested, I used the Eye of Observation to examine his magic. While Along and Kalia were talking, he had secretly carried out his task. He truly saw it. A split veil radiating a dark aura that was wrapped around him. He's tearing the veil itself apart. He's twisting the absolute immutable principles. He's anchoring lightning. The more he spoke, the more Bianco lost his composure and began to scream. The Eye of Observation had shown him things that were not meant to be seen. Bianco screamed again. He's bending it, collapsing the very laws of nature, but even after doing all that, the magic still materialized. He performed an impossible miracle. Upon hearing this, Kalia's face darkened. She stared at Bianco, her eyes wide with fear, but he wasn't finished. Bianco spoke again, his voice low and hoarse. But what happened after that? That's when I saw it. The cracking ice, and that bloodshot dark red eye lying deep within Along. It clearly belongs to the great forgotten god. At this thought, Bianco grimaced and slumped over. His trembling hands clutched his head as he constantly mumbled, reminding himself to stop thinking that it was too dangerous to think about it any further. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, he looked up and warned Kalia with a grave expression. When I was young, I delved so deep into ancient lore that I was lauded for my research on the magic of the Forgotten Era. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. Do not oppose Count Palladio. Kalia's brow furrowed as she asked mockingly, So you're saying it's pointless for a mere mortal like me to try and fathom his intentions? Bianco knew that whether it was Loria or Kalia, they were both just pawns for Along's amusement. But he couldn't say that aloud. He simply offered Kalia a short piece of advice. I recommend you go and meet Duchess Antia. Although he didn't elaborate, it seemed Kalia vaguely understood that she had become the Count's pawn. Sometime later, about 2 years after the children had left the orphanage at Count Pallatio's estate. As Evan opened the door to his study, Along called out, Hey, Evan. As Evan approached, Along continued to sort through his documents and asked, Do you have any news? Preferably about the children, he added. Evan hesitated. It's not about the children, he replied, then continued, but it appears the Dominion and the Duchy of Antia have formed an alliance. Along froze as if struck by lightning. What? He asked again. The two top powers of the underworld have formed an alliance. Evan nodded firmly to confirm. Because it's an underworld pact outsiders are not meant to know. However, I am absolutely certain about this. Along's mind was in turmoil. He thought to himself, I pushed the sinner down a different path, but now I have to face an alliance between the two main culprits. Is the Astoria kingdom about to collapse? Then another thought struck him. Wait, did she actually believe what I told her back then? He recalled their last meeting when he himself had suggested to Kalia, If you need someone to talk to, I recommend you go see Duchess Antia. The thought filled him with endless regret. Pushing the chaotic thoughts aside, Along reassured himself. It's probably just a temporary alliance. With Kalia's cold and arrogant personality, she would never... Along's thought trailed off. Still, he reconsidered. But I should at least make some preparations. Acting on this, he took out a piece of paper. He began to write a formal letter. To Kalia. My apologies if I came across as too blunt and cold. The truth is I am not very good with words. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm making excuses. Sunlight streamed through the window pane. After finishing the letter, he handed it to Evan and waved his hand dismissively. I'll leave this to you. Before leaving the room, Evan promised, I'll send this to the Lady of the Dominion via the Mercenary Guild. I will also keep an eye on the children. Alone in the room, Along looked at the other letters in his hand. He wondered to himself, how are Raiden and Xiaolong doing? I haven't heard anything from them since Utia's letter saying they'd arrived. Thinking of the mischievous Xiaolong, he couldn't help but worry. Please don't let her starve out there on the streets. He thought about the letter he had sent to Xiaolong, thinking with confidence, if she finds the gift I mentioned in the letter, she will become the greatest of all warriors. As far as he knew, the magic hand was the ultimate treasure of the Golden Mane tribe. When equipped, it increases critical hit chance by 20%. If the arrogant sinner had gotten her hands on this, she wouldn't have fallen and become the sinner. Instead, she would have become a great wolf beastkin. That's what the item description said anyway. Along's gaze drifted outside as he grew anxious again. I did tell her the location of the secret treasure after all. The one I was going to use as an emergency fund. I mean, she's talented enough to make her own way, so it'll be fine. Right? That place is a nation of warriors, a place where strength can grant you the entire world. It is the desolate, sand-swept desert nation of Q. Under a glittering, star-filled night sky. Deep inside a rocky cave, Xiaolong skipped along a rugged path toward the exit. Stepping outside, she stretched, crying out in a joyful voice, the trial is finally over. Looking at the magic hand, now equipped on her own hand, Xiaolong grinned from ear to ear and gave thanks. Oh, Great Moon, thank you for this gift. Waving her arms around playfully, she giggled and marveled to herself. I always thought the ultimate treasure of the Golden Mane tribe was just a legend. Turns out what Mom told me when I was a kid wasn't just a fairy tale. At this thought, Xiaolong's gaze drifted into the distance as old memories came flooding back of when she was a little girl gathered around her mother with her brothers and sisters. She had once innocently asked about the essence of the Golden Mane tribe, and her mother, gently stroking her small head, had told her in a soft voice, That's right. We, the Wolf tribe, are the descendants of the king of all beastmen. The essence of the Golden Mane tribe is a legendary treasure that has been passed down for hundreds of years. It grants us strength and authority, but obtaining it is no easy trial. Only those who are worthy can possess this precious treasure. And now she had finally obtained the essence after a long and arduous journey to find it. It was placed on a precarious cliff edge. Then, when she put it on, an excruciating near-death pain ravaged her body as she overcame all the trials of her inner world. Enduring those two terrible ordeals was undeniable proof that Xiaolong was worthy of the treasure she now held. Old memories came rushing back to her. She was truly grateful to Dai Nguyen, her savior, who had rescued her from death in a biological experiment during the lowest point of her life when she had scars on her skin and a soul ready to give up. Dai Nguyen was the light that saved her entire life. He had given her the strength to take revenge on Hakryong, the one who murdered her parents. Lang resolutely vowed that she would repay his kindness. As if sensing her fierce will, the essence in her hand flared with a powerful surge of energy. Xiaolong confidently tested the treasure, telling herself, he certainly wouldn't want me to become just an ordinary fighter. From now on, at this thought, Xiaolong paused. A mystical light flashed in her eyes as streams of magical energy flowed into her body. She silently promised herself that she had to become the strongest fighter. I will revive the Golden Mane tribe by gathering the remaining members and kill Hakryong with this. With that said, Xiaolong raised the hand wearing the essence to the sky. This treasure would be the proof of her honorable vow. The stream of memories ended and Xiaolong stood in silence. Standing in the middle of the colony desert late at night, she gazed at the bright moon and was reminded of Dai Nguyen. Xiaolong's soft voice was carried on the cool breeze. Everything is for him. Now, let's begin. After saying this, Xiaolong let out a bright laugh and cheerfully skipped forward. In the quiet desolation of the colony at night, the only sound was Xiaolong's steady footsteps moving forward. This image seemed to be a sign of the future. The great beastmen kings of the Golden Mane tribe will be revived under the blue moon after 500 years. As Xiaolong was intently reading a document, Evan suddenly spoke up. Oh, right, he said apologetically while wiping his sword. The Intelligence Guild got some information about the kids. I meant to tell you at the training grounds, but I forgot. Xiaolong wasn't angry and calmly asked, all right, what is it? Evan recounted, Qian Gang is doing very well at the settlement. She's even earned the nickname Golden Flash. Xiaolong frowned slightly. Golden Flash. He felt like he'd heard that name somewhere before. In any case, I'm just glad to hear she's okay. He nodded. That's right, in that land. As long as you have strength, you can do anything. Xiaolong then asked, and what about Radon? I haven't heard anything from him since he said he was apprenticing in Rasa's. Evan explained, there's some information about him, but they're still in the process of verifying its accuracy. Hearing that, Along grew pensive. Is that so? By the way, Evan. He shot him a suspicious look. Aren't you supposed to be busy? He broke out in a sweat and stammered, Why are you suddenly looking at me like that? I've done everything you told me to. Along instructed you need to get ready. It'll take at least a month to get to the Magic Tower. He jumped to his feet, startled. What the Magic Tower? You haven't said a word to me about it. Along rubbed his chin in surprise. Oh, haven't I? Evan sighed. Well, I'm used to this. He couldn't help but be suspicious. But a whole month, it only takes about a week to get to the Magic Tower. He replied, We're going to the Blue Magic Tower. Hearing that, Evan nodded. I see. That place is near the Labyrinth City, so it's quite far. Finally, he stood up to leave the room. I'll start preparing immediately. Along gave a silent nod of agreement after Evan left. He immediately slumped into his chair and sighed. Having to sit in a carriage for a whole month again, just thinking about it is exhausting. But what can I do? The item that can support my precious little mana core is there after all. Thinking of this, Along turned and rested his chin on his hand. Labyrinth City, huh? That brings back some memories. Back when I was playing the game, I spent a ton of time grinding levels there. He closed his eyes, recalling. The labyrinth in the city center was a special grinding map inside Chadalia, where players could obtain higher quality items by leveling up and venturing deeper inside. However, despite countless players visiting the labyrinth, not a single one had ever reached the end. Back then, Along had to use cheats just to get down to the 150th floor. He couldn't help but curse, those damn developers must be insane. There are still more floors below. What's the point of adding more when no one can even get down there? Maybe it's to watch us suffer. Are there any decent items on floor 150? However, just like in a game, achievements and artifacts are still constantly being discovered down there. As a result, the profession of a magic appraiser officially became so popular that it guaranteed a life of luxury. Suddenly, Along remembered Ren. She had said she would be taking the exam soon. An appraiser with her talent would surely pass the exam with ease. Back in the present, he suddenly felt guilty, thinking that perhaps the gift he gave Ren was too small. Compared to what others might have, all it could do was appraise equipment. If that gift isn't enough, I should send her some support separately. On a starlit night in the labyrinth city of Latania, a place not under the rule of any single person. This is a city of adventurers and mercenaries. In a small alley past countless shops in a corner of the southern district, one could find a secret appraisal shop. Its name is a shop that quietly gained fame for its unique services. This place caters mainly to the nobility and A-rank adventurers. Among them is even the Lord of Latania. Ren announced, The appraisal is complete, my lord. He looked surprised. She held up the item and explained, This device uses mana to create fire. The Lord smiled and thanked her as always. Let me see. As he took the device, Ren pointed out, This is a holy relic that can be imprinted. The Lord asked curiously, What does imprinted mean? She replied calmly, With just a little mana, and it can sustain a flame for at least 1 hour. He couldn't help but laugh, exclaiming, Its efficiency has increased significantly, very good. With their business concluded, the Lord left. Just before walking out the door, he turned back and said, My thanks as always. From behind the counter, a gentle voice replied, You're welcome, sir. Once the shop was empty, she reached up and removed her mask. Under the dim light, Ren's beautiful face was revealed, her eyes a clear jade green. Showing a hint of exhaustion, she then turned towards another item on a shelf, which looked like a pair of binoculars. Ren walked over, picked it up, and mumbled to herself. This item can also be imprinted. At that moment, it started to make sense. The reason why this hidden shop was so famous, it was because of the imprinting. Carrying the item, Ren opened the door to another room and stepped inside. This was a gift from the Great Moon. Moonlight streamed into the room through a window. Its light fell fully upon a floating, glowing object. Looking at it, she smiled softly. When he first told me to become an appraiser, I couldn't understand why. Ren remembered the image of Along. His true identity, a friend of Play Sao from the forgotten era of the Outer Gods. I understood that everything up to now was for the sake of destroying the dark thing. But then she read the letter. It said, Go to the labyrinth city of Latania and become a magic appraiser. At the time, I couldn't connect that order with our goal at all. However, Ren still followed his instructions and set out for the labyrinth city alone, though she was still full of doubt. What does becoming an appraiser have to do with killing the dark thing? But what happened next changed her mind. The moment I saw his gift, I realized. That gift. The Eye of the Stalker. It helps quickly identify items below a certain mana threshold to aid in appraisals. The moment Ren touched the eye, she suddenly realized, it was slightly different from what she knew. Its true nature didn't even exist in the library. Then, the seals around the eye gradually vanished. The chains wrapped around it snapped open. It flared with light, and its single eye opened as the seal was broken. Imprinting has been unlocked. At that time, above the eye, there was a counter showing 0 out of 500. Ren told herself, to gain the power to fight the dark thing, I have to awaken this item. This is an ability and also a means to offer sacrifices. Currently, the number on the Eye of the Stalker has changed. It now displays 248 out of 500. She held the binoculars towards it. A golden beam of light shot out, and soon a holy seal appeared on the body of the binoculars. Ren gave a wry smile. I still have to sacrifice 252 more items before it's fully awakened. In exchange for enhancing a holy relic's stats, it absorbs something from the item, fundamentally changing this eye. One time when she was imprinting an item that displeased the eye, all her previously accumulated offering points were completely wiped out. And since then, Ren learned one thing for sure: it only reacts to specific high-grade holy relics. And if the wrong item is sacrificed, the accumulated count will disappear. Thinking about this, she couldn't help but smile, gently nuzzling her head against the eye. Accurately appraising all holy relics and selecting high-grade sacrifices for imprinting, this is something only I can do, because I was born with the Eternal Library. Ren cradled it in her hands. It's all for the sake of killing the Dark Wolf. All according to the will of the Great Moon. 3 weeks later at Lama Tower, a carriage moved quietly along the cobblestone road around the tower. Inside, Fenia, the Vice Tower Master of Lama Tower, frowned in annoyance and spoke. The Tower Master is currently away. State your business and be on your way. Seeing Along remain silent, she grew even more irritated. I'm busy, so spit it out. He looked at Fenia, silently assessing her. She's a familiar face I've seen in the main storyline. Right now, she's still the Vice Tower Master because the main story hasn't started yet. In the game, she's a rare genius who reached the 8th circle at only 20 years old and became the master of this tower. Speaking of Lama Tower, it's a magic tower that is not only powerful, but also holds a monopoly on the production of certain essential goods, putting their status on par with the nobility. He was a little displeased. The authority of a Vice Tower Master who has surpassed human limits should be immense. But this attitude is a bit much. Even so, it was annoying. Along still managed to introduce himself. I am Count Panlatio, as was previously announced. I am here to discuss the matter of the Time Gate. On the other side, Fenia was busy. Right. I still have to deliver this document. But as he spoke, she just asked, so what is it? Along calmly replied, I can eliminate the Time Gate. Fenia's hand, which was holding the document, froze. The Time Gate. He's talking about that. It's a rift that connects to a mysterious subspace appearing in places where magic is frequently used. It creates anomalies that cause severe damage. Monsters that are dangerously unpredictable, impossible for anyone to foresee. She looked at him with her analytical eyes, and after a moment of consideration, her tone turned contemptuous. With that pathetic talent of yours, what do you possibly think you can do? No. Fenia didn't hesitate to wave him away. Whatever. Just leave. Along was flustered. Wait, this isn't how it's supposed to go. I need an answer. She cut him off, annoyed. You're going to eliminate the Time Gate and take the treasure, is that it? Yes, of course, that's what you'd do. Furious. Fenia slammed her hand on the table and yelled, That's it, isn't it? Do you have any idea how many people come here every day for that same reason, huh? Along tried to persuade her. I'm telling the truth. Take me to the Time Gate and I'll prove it to you. He felt indignant. Why won't she believe me? Seriously. Her voice suddenly dropped. Listen, I get it. You need some grand achievement to turn public opinion around because people are starting to realize the only reason you became a count was pure luck. When your brothers died. However, that doesn't mean you can bring your personal problems here to cause trouble. As she spoke, Fenia unleashed her power, making the very air tremble. Startled, Along stumbled back, but Evan caught him. So that's the rumor going around, he thought. It must be because I've lived so quietly, even though it's true. She seems like a complete workaholic, yet she's surprisingly well-informed about the outside world. Phinea's gaze now seemed to crackle with electricity burning with absolute rage. Along shivered involuntarily. She's terrifying. No joke. She's putting me in my place, and I was just starting to get a little annoyed. Evan leaned in and whispered in his ear, "That's just her mana leaking out. I'm pretty sure she'd snap us in half if we tried to fight her." Along calmed himself, regaining his resolve. "But I'm pretty desperate," so he stepped forward to negotiate. "If I fail to close the time gate, I will offer my entire fortune to the magic tower." But Phinia remained unconvinced. "Still spouting nonsense, I see." Along's gaze was firm. "If you wish, I will make a magical oath. It's not a bad offer for a moment of your time. Don't you think so?" Hearing this, she hesitated for a moment, a flicker of indecision in her eyes. A short while later, Phinia led him to a door. "The time gate is in here, as promised. All your assets will be mine the moment you fail," Along replied confidently. "That won't be happening." She leaned her head against the door, watching him and thinking, perfect timing. I was just wondering if he's the mastermind of his domain or just some useless guy who got lucky. After listening to him talk, I'm leaning toward the latter. Phinia smirked contemptuously. She also assessed that despite the inhuman aura surrounding him, he only has a small mana core and slightly above-average energy perception. But his talent barely reaches the second circle. What can he possibly do with that? How pathetic. The truth is, there's no real need to close this gate. In 3 months, it will naturally disappear after spitting out a holy relic. Our research would have concluded then, and not a single mage capable of closing a time gate would have appeared. However, the time gate at the Blue Magic Tower had been wreaking havoc for over 2 years, and now, Along slowly approached the cracked time gate. Phinia shrugged, warning him, "If you can't do anything, you can just leave the room." He ignored her and began weaving hand signs. She frowned in suspicion. "Are you going to use your hands as a catalyst instead of a staff? Even the ancient grimoires classify that as a primitive method. It's a method you'd pretty much only find in fairy tales." Phinia couldn't help her disdain. She wanted to stop him. "For God's sake, stop this charade and leave." Along ignored her and began his chant. Suddenly, the surroundings plunged into darkness. Phinia paled, a cold sweat trickling down the bridge of her nose. "I can't move." "Oh, everything has stopped moving." Phinia quickly channeled mana into her eyes to scan the area. In front of her was a massive crimson eye tightly closed. "What is that?" In the blink of an eye, the eye opened. Its deep crimson pupil seemed to bore into Phinia's very soul. She focused on the mysterious circles within it. She mused, an unknown entity. Understanding its essence should be simple. That must not be allowed to happen." Phinia reached out her hand as if to touch something. "Stop thinking. Sever them. What has been understood must never be realized. Cut off your thoughts." Now, the red eye continued to stare. A moment later, a giant hand gently approached Phinia, and a thought flashed through her mind. An absolute command. Her eyes widened, her face beaded with fearful sweat. "I understand the command." The massive eye then shrank and snapped shut, leaving a bewildered Phinia staring upward. She stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Along's voice made her jump. "The gate is closed!" Just as he said it, she noticed he was holding something in his hand. I thought to myself, this should be a piece of cake. All I need is the right item and a special method. Then Aaron said, "I'll retrieve the holy relic that Sharon spat out." He glanced at Phinia and mused, "I'll need to use it a few more times, so I used a persuasion spell on her. I wonder if she bought it." Phinia's face was a mask of terror as she stammered, "Yes, I won't tell anyone." Aaron thought with a sense of defeat. Judging by her face, did my bluff fail? He stepped towards Phinia. "Yes, well, I appreciate it, but you don't have to." Phinia scrambled backwards in fear, shouting, "Yes, I will keep it an absolute secret." "I won't tell anyone." Terrified, she kept backing away, yelling, "I can really keep a secret. Seriously." Aaron, still confused, wondered to himself, why is she suddenly acting like this? He turned away and called to Evan, "Let's go home." Before he could leave, Aaron looked back at the sound of a voice. "Please wait a moment." Phinia immediately opened a medicine box and held it out to him. "This is a mana recovery potion that I made myself." "Please take it." Aaron picked up a bottle and examined it. "A potion personally crafted by the Vice Tower Master, and it's a high-grade one at that." Then Phinia asked, Do you like it, sir?" Aaron's face went blank as he thought, These 2 bottles are worth several low-grade ones combined. I looked up the price and nearly choked. Then Aaron wondered, is she this grateful just because I closed the gate? Fania, pale and flustered, said, "It's about what the Count asked of me. I will absolutely keep quiet about it. Seriously." Suddenly she blurted out naively, "Of course." A mana oath. Should I make a mana oath? Aaron thought, exasperated. A mana oath for something this trivial. A moment later he spoke up, "Wait a minute." Then he thought to himself, she seems to be misunderstanding something. Suddenly numerous chains fell from above where they were standing, quickly binding them. Fania cried out, "See, I'm very good at keeping promises." Aaron turned back with a weary sigh and replied, "I get it." He then thought dejectedly, she shows no sign of wanting to clear up this misunderstanding. A thought passed through his mind, and so it was that at the Blue Tower he had obtained the holy relic. He wanted 5 potions and an oath. Early the next morning, in front of a grand and magnificent tower, Evan stared at the item on Aaron's arm and asked, "Is this the treasure that dropped from the gate?" It was really hard to get. "But it looks more primitive than I expected. Is its performance good?" Aaron gently touched the item and replied, "Well, regardless, this is something I absolutely need." He stared intently at the item. The seal of the irreverent. So I got it safely. The gem embedded in the bracelet could absorb and store mana from the air. The item on Aaron's arm suddenly began to glow, making him exclaim, "It works well." He mused again. "The storage capacity isn't large, but with my magic core it's more than enough." Then Aaron looked into the distance. A body with less mana, and then even a support item. He stated his resolve. "My goal is to research magic and protect myself, not to fight." Aaron sat in a corner nodding. This is enough. He thought of Fania again and wondered, "By the way, what exactly did Fania misunderstand?" Aaron suddenly recalled her abrupt politeness. "It's so weird." He remembered Fania saying, "Please come in." Aaron had turned to her to introduce himself. "Let me be clear, I am a 2-circle mage." Fania had cheerfully replied, "I know you look exactly like a 2-circle mage." Hearing that, Aaron was bewildered. Is she mocking me? Back in the present, he sat quietly thinking, this reaction is similar to Kalia's that time. He continued to recall the image of Kalia. Elsewhere, Fania forced a smile, still feeling uneasy. Aaron looked out the window, lost in thought. "Anyway, I won't be seeing any of them again. It should be fine." Bright sunlight shone down. Below, a horse-drawn carriage rolled along as a voice rang out, "The weather is lovely." Someone replied, "Yes, it's so peaceful." Outside, the Antia-Duchy was incredibly quiet. Loria held a teacup in her hand. She said gently, "It's been a while. I hope you have a pleasant time, Lady Kalia." Kalia smiled and replied, "Of course, Lady Antia, you haven't changed a bit. I'm truly happy to see you again." Loria said gracefully, "It's so convenient that we don't need to discuss status or power with each other." Kalia added, "Count Palatio's foresight is once again astounding." She remembered along. "It seems visiting Duke Antia was a good idea," Kalia mused. "After following his advice, I quickly understood his true intentions." That evening, while talking, they both realized they were inferior to Palatio. Loria's and Kalia's jaws dropped in amazement. Whatever the reason, it was an alliance built on Count Palatio's command. An authoritative image of Along occasionally appeared because fighting for power is pointless when standing beneath the absolute number 1. 2 crests also appeared. Genonia and Antia had become more comfortable allies. Loria wondered, "The conference is next month. Why did you come to visit today?" Kalia explained. "The Countess sent a letter under the pretext of my visit." Loria gently opened the letter. What could be in here? The letter's content was a conversation about the noble families. It read, "Lady Zenonia, I hope you are well regarding your last visit. A few nobles have also complained to me about it. Therefore, there aren't many nobles who are a good fit for me. Please understand." Kalia spoke up. "It looks like a normal apology letter," but Loria interjected. "There is definitely a hidden scheme within it." Kalia immediately agreed. "Right. I think we should discuss it." And so the 2 of them talked together. "Not many nobles who are a good fit for me, huh? Baron Kenya is from the aristocratic faction, and Marquis Marantino is one of the key figures in the royal faction. Viscount Belanda is from the royal faction, and Duke Fandion is a key figure in the aristocratic faction. Among the nobles he spoke with at the last ball," Loria concluded. "In short, he likes neither the aristocratic faction nor the royal faction." A horrifying thought emerged. "So, kill them all," Loria said calmly. We should draw our conclusions based on common sense. Kalia quickly replied, I agree. Loria said pensively, well then, before she emphasized, he wants to eliminate the current nobility. As they understood everything, both of their faces paled in fear. Loria stared intently and said, that is what it means. Kalia, also terrified, added, and create a new government. Loria looked up at the sky in frustration. This is why Antia needs his reputation and influence as a duke. The atmosphere became a bit awkward. If the hegemon of the West is on his side, then surely, Kalia affirmed, it seems so. The two of them then said, shall we devise a plan? Meanwhile, at the Blue Tower, a voice rang out. Count Palazzo, you mean he's like the gate? Fenia sprawled wearily across the table. Yes, Tower Master, Raiden said curiously. Tell me the details. She looked up, then sighed, and just like that, the pieces of the puzzle, which had been created randomly, moved chaotically and snapped into place. Elsewhere, Evan asked worriedly, are you all right, my lord? Along put a hand to his mouth and replied, I suddenly choked on a sweet potato. He added calmly, but it's still delicious. Evan brought him water, saying, here's some water. Along took it. Thank you. He had a sad, gloomy expression. I want to go home so badly. Then he thought, it's also about time for Utia's letter to arrive. The sky gradually darkened. Beneath a statue of a goddess, Utia stood silently there. Then she smiled softly, a bashful look on her face. The scene changes back to the Blue Tower. A voice rang out, oh, my dear Phinia, my disciple, I have returned. As soon as he arrived, he looked around. How strange. I can no longer sense the presence of the Gate of Time, the master of the Blue Tower, 8th Circle, Archmage Salemikado. Seeing her like that, he also wondered, did an incident occur while I was away? Tower Master, you've finally returned. I have completed all the tasks you assigned me. Phinia. Salem was stunned. Is something seriously wrong? She isn't throwing a tantrum at me like usual. What on earth is going on? Because Phinia had been appointed Vice Tower Master at a young age due to her innate talent, her ego and arrogance were sky high. But she must have just made some newcomer cry again. This is the 77th time this has happened. Even so, I never intended to correct that personality because her passion for magic is incredibly pure. Once she reaches the 7th circle, she will understand for herself that her achievements up until now were nothing much, and she will naturally become more humble. That's why this situation is truly bizarre. He then approached to console her. I said, hey, my assignment in the north this time was quite long. Has the backlog of work in my absence overwhelmed you? She turned to look at him with a pleading look. It was then that she told him everything. So the Count sealed the Gate of Time, but because I made an oath, I cannot reveal the exact method he used. Besides, there aren't many details to recount about the process of closing the gate. That is all I can report. The thing that could make Phinia so humble is an incomprehensible type of magic. Or to be more precise, it's primordial magic, isn't it? She's so scared she didn't even bother to resist when I touched her. That Count Palazzo from the Astoria Kingdom, is it? How very interesting. This is a person I need to pay attention to. 1 month since leaving the Blue Tower, after obtaining the seal of the blasphemer, I began to delve deeply into studying the code words in earnest, because now my daily magic usage limit has been increased. Important note: the rules for operating code words. The magic will collapse if the following criteria are not met. Do not use illogical magic. Do not repeat the same element, and only a maximum of 4 types of magic are allowed. Combining similar phrases can create a resonance effect. New discovery. It seems a specific code word needs to be scientifically prearranged. That's my guess, and thanks to that I've grasped a new operational rule for polymorphic code word clusters. This might be related to the technique and position I establish. The magic was working, but something still felt uncertain. Just then, Evan happened to pass by. He approached and said, every time I witness it, your magic seems even more powerful than before, my lord. Is that so? Along let out a weary sigh at this. Before, it was nothing like the level of a 2nd circle spell, but now it seems it's on a completely different level compared to a few months ago. I don't think a normal gravity spell could ever create a crater this deep. But gravity is just a 2nd circle spell. Even pushed to its maximum output, it shouldn't have enough power to completely crush an entity. I thought I was gradually getting stronger, So it wasn't just my imagination after all, was it? Your magic is truly captivating, my Lord Count. If there is indeed a reason for this surge in power, it certainly isn't due to simple mastery or incantations. After all, improving one's proficiency in magic only increases accuracy and practical application, while incantations merely act as activation keywords. To change the properties of the spell, that's all. I spent months analyzing the incantation matrix for gravity, and recently I've been substituting nearly identical phrases for each other. I finally realized that the power only increases when I find the most optimal arrangement. It can't just be an illusion. If it is, then this is absurd. There's just no reason for the spell's destructive power to increase so suddenly. Perhaps recently. My physical condition has just been at its peak. I stopped by to deliver a letter from Utia for you. It just arrived. Thank you, Evan. I'll head back to my room and ponder it when I have some free time. Oh, are you going to your study right now? Yes. I've already used up all 3 of my spell casts for today. So what is the source of my sudden increase in power? Could it be a benefit received from a curse? A curse is an ancient ritual from the East where the caster accepts a personal sacrifice to harm another or even oneself. While bearing the curse, the target suffers, but at the same time receives some power in return. But there's no one around here who understands Eastern esoteric arts, so that possibility is ruled out. Or could it be the power of faith, but for the count of a small nation forgotten by the underworld? That sounds absurd. Well, sometimes I should just put all these worries aside and get on with my life. After all, nothing bad has come of it. The Holy Kingdom of Rosario, the capital Ryanel, a pristine city where the residents worship Saronia, the goddess of the moon and peace. In the Eastern chapel, Utia is praying. Greetings, sister. A knight approached with a respectful tone. Greetings, Sir Knight Locke. Is everything well? Locke thought to himself. She's a nun of a rank even lower than a holy knight. She doesn't even have the right to wear the sash of holy grace. Still, I must maintain a respectful attitude. Yes, this time, we successfully rescued 8 children and 25 civilians from a remote village between the eastern and western borders. But this achievement is all thanks to you, sister. That's not so. It was you who performed those noble deeds, and it was you, sister, who enlightened an ignorant soul like me. I will be forever grateful for that. For 25 long years, I was drowning in despair because I couldn't feel even a shred of divine power. I had almost given up on everything. If there is something you yearn for so strongly, try placing your complete faith in the moon. The moon, Locke was desperate and skeptical. You will understand many things after you have truly done it. At that time, I was so desperate that I was willing to try anything. I prayed earnestly to the moon for many days, just as she instructed. And then, I was miraculously able to use divine power. I was overjoyed by it. But because of that, I also succumbed to a momentary temptation. When I placed my faith in the moon, instead of the goddess Saronia, I once feared I was treading the path of heresy. However, all power borrowed from the divine is of the same nature. Even the holy relics blessed in the goddess's name still shine brightly when I touch them. That is proof. It's clear proof of the divine power I now possess. But why did you advise me to believe in the moon, sister? Because faith originates from an intangible belief, and it can take a very long time to manifest. It is always easier to seek what you need from something that is physically present before your eyes. Utia paused. That moonlight will always watch over and be by your side. To support you. I understand now. Because the goddess herself is a symbol of the moon. This is a way for those filled with doubt to find a foothold, an absolute anchor for their hopes and desires. Locke bowed his head in gratitude. Sister, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you wish to show your gratitude, then let us begin the prayer ritual together. I am willing to do so as many times as necessary. You've arrived just in time. The ceremony is about to begin, and everyone has gathered. Utia leads Locke into the cathedral where countless people have gathered. She gracefully walks towards the center of the sanctuary. Locke also finds a place to sit. Now let us all pray together. The moonlight is clearer than ever tonight. Everyone turn your gaze towards the great moon. Meanwhile, our main character, Along, holds a letter from Utah and lets out a weary sigh. Today's letter is nothing special, mostly just about daily life. Just that. Which also means everyone is living well. That's a good thing. It is. But the fact that no one besides Utah sends me letters even though they're all doing fine still makes me a little sad. Though if I think about it from their perspective, I can kind of understand. To them, I'm just some strange old man they've never met, so I was probably just a kind person who passed through their lives. Anyway, I achieved my goal of guiding them onto the right path so they wouldn't destroy the world. so there's no reason to be sad. No reason at all. Absolutely no reason at all. Inside, Along was a bit shaken. Utia must be so busy, yet she still writes to me regularly. I raised 5 children, but in the end only the eldest acknowledges my efforts. Just as Along was silently crying inside, his friend Evan suddenly spoke up. "Count, are you busy at the moment?" Evan's sudden question startled Along. "Oh, huh, you're still here." He didn't have to go back, instead pulling out a piece of paper. He said, "Ah, yes. I've just received some news about the children from the Information Guild, so I wanted to report to you immediately. It's about Radon, the one you asked about last time. He has now become a pirate." This news truly made question marks pop up over our hero's head. A few seconds later, he stammered out, Could you elaborate?" And so, the two of them sat down at a table, and the guard Evan slowly recounted the information he had gathered. First off, the ones with the most rumors are Xiaolong and Zhou. She has achieved a 32-win streak out of 100 matches. This is a mandatory condition for her to become a Belanda. Hearing this, Along was startled and asked, "A 32-win streak? Wait a minute, the fighter with the longest win streak is..." Before he could finish, Evan nodded. "The Lion King with a 41-win streak." At this point, Along couldn't help but be impressed. The Lion King is an incredibly strong character who even joined the player's party for a short time. This colony relies on many powerful individuals to display its military might, and she's about to surpass the colony's very leader. Unaware of his thoughts, Evan continued his report. As for Dare, his congregation has executed one of the 8 Manika leaders of the Snow region. The leaders of those who transform into monsters through rituals. You know of them, don't you, sir? For our hero, there was no way he wouldn't know this part of the plot. He thought to himself, I know them all too well. Back in the game, I had to fight the Manji tribe and destroy their god Ulanser. It's a good thing I don't have to face them now. Because Ulanser only appears when the 5 great sins are gathered, an extremely difficult stage to clear. Thinking this, Along feigned calmness. Oh, is that so? Well, it seems I don't need to worry about Dare anymore. Evan cheerfully agreed with this. He is now considered to be on par with Dare the First Sword. To know that the kid he sponsored had become so powerful, Along was already thinking about how to ride his coattails. Maybe I really should go see him. It'll probably be very rewarding. Paying no mind to the hero's delusions, Evan added, As for Ren, she has become an appraiser. She can now inscribe black patterns onto artifacts to enhance their abilities. Something like that exists? How interesting. She's probably also living well in her own way. Along replied with a nod. But then his tone changed. So the main point is, Radon really became a pirate. Seeing that they had gotten to the main issue, Evan's expression also grew a bit more serious. About that, have you heard of the 7 archipelagos off the coast of Rosias? In the 7 archipelagos where the great pirates reside, he has become the captain of the first island, the largest of them all. At this, Along seemed to collapse in disappointment. No way! A forum post I once laughed off has now become my own reality. I didn't send him to Rusias for that reason. Radon is very good at finding enemies. Moreover, as a rare sea god, he can move freely underwater. The seas of Rusias also contain many precious holy relics, which is why I advised him to become a treasure hunter. A profession with a promising future. I also used to specialize in finding enemies. Over on the side, Evan seemed to notice how desperate Along was, and offered him a bit of encouragement. The captain of a great pirate crew is now practically synonymous with being the lord of that island. He's become an extremely important figure. I suppose so. Along replied, but the desperate looks on their faces didn't fade in the slightest. He couldn't help but wonder how on earth Raiden had eliminated the captain of the first archipelago. By what means? All the captains were skilled, and they'd never lost a single naval battle to anyone. Maybe it only salvages the truly precious items. Among the relics of the old era, I wanted to get a top-tier holy relic myself, so I had to grind for so many hours as a treasure hunter. So it armed itself, to claim the captain's position for itself. I know this world doesn't always work the way I want, but this is truly bitter, so this is what it feels like. To have a son who's a pirate? The thought made Along turn deathly pale as if he could drop dead at any moment. It scared the crap out of Evan. Baron, are you all right? Scene changed to the heart of the Grand Duchy of Korea, the colossal port city of Rusas. Across the sea from the city lie the 7 pirate havens, the largest of which is the first archipelago. The great pirate Redhead was once its captain, the one who traded wealth for the Sky King's protection. And this is the man who defeated him to become the new captain of the first archipelago. Radon now wore an incredibly troubled expression. I just didn't know. What is the Great Moon? I never really cared, so I never gave it much deep thought. At first, he was just someone I was grateful to. I should have died as a slave dissected and experimented on. But thanks to him, I met Utah and awakened my abilities. To be honest, it felt more like I was following Utah's orders while working as the Blue Moon. So when I received a direct order from the Great Moon, I really couldn't understand it. What's the point of becoming a treasure hunter? It even fills me with a sense of disgust. I have to start my revenge as soon as possible. Those things in black, they massacred my entire tribe. We were living peacefully on an island that no one even knew about on the continent we had just managed to escape to. Those damned hunters killed my parents when they were exhausted and sold me off as a slave. I don't see how becoming a treasure hunter and that gift have anything to do with my vow of vengeance. The very day Raiden set foot in this place, it seems I have to at least pretend to be following orders. Why is it so noisy over there? Raiden noticed the nearby ship. The wanted posters now appeared on the board behind him. He immediately used his ability to scan them. The ones who had destroyed everything Raiden had were all here. A man with a scarred face laughed mockingly and said, "Only the chosen great pirates can receive the Sky King's protection through wealth. The chosen captains of the 7 archipelagos are eternal." By this point, Radon could no longer suppress his killing intent. I found them. The bastards who murdered my parents. So they've finally seized power, haven't they, the Sky King? He's intentionally spreading lies. Only through a sacred ritual using parts from the body of the sea god can one receive the power bestowed by the sea god, Klai. And every captain of the 7 archipelagos has wielded that power. They're celebrating oblivious to the disaster that's about to strike. Those cursed hunters tore my parents' bodies into 7 or 8 pieces. Radon's fury erupted. That evening, with fireworks lighting up the sky, Radon stood high on a ship looking grimly at the scene as the waves crashed endlessly. He gloomily wondered to himself, how did he know? Radon's lips moved, murmuring, "Even though I never told him." He looked at the beautiful ship out there and thought with awe. It's as if the Great Moon is fulfilling his promise, and to even arrange an opportunity for revenge at the perfect time like this. Radon clenched his fists, trembling, thinking, but with our current strength, I'm afraid we're no match for them. He recalled those people, because they are the ones who possess the power of the sea god. As he remembered this, Radon suddenly paused, contemplating. If this was all part of the plan from the very beginning, Radon held his necklace high, murmuring, then, this gift must have a purpose too. Raiden held the necklace up under the moonlight enveloping the ship. The Great Moon had already arranged everything. He held the necklace reverently in both hands. Radon had always understood that the chessboard and the foundation for his revenge had already been laid out for him. The young man's eyes filled with resentment. He placed the pendant on his forehead, a fiery determination kindling in his heart. The next day, the green sea lapped gently against the shore, and on the small islands the trees were lush. Tall coconut trees reached for the sky. A young man's feet ran swiftly across the grassy shore of a small island. Radon leaped from a high place straight into the sea without hesitation, his entire body plunging down. He was surrounded by the current amidst the clear waves and foam. The young man saw the familiar necklace. Radon's eyes suddenly lit up when he saw it. The necklace fit perfectly around the young man's neck. It was a gift from the Great Moon, the Sweet Dew Lens. Radon recalled that the Sweet Dew Lens makes it easier to find relics sunken in the deep sea, and a few of the relics found that way would be enough to make up for the power I lack. That day, as dusk fell upon the sea, Radon swam down, diving deeper toward the treasure on the seabed. Radon fastened the items he found under the sea to his ankle. As he walked, he muttered, "Is that all just a thank you? I really am a fool." Radon clutched the treasure chest and looked up. The Great Moon had kept his promise. He thought back on all that had happened. He didn't just bring the target of my revenge before me. He also granted me the strength to get that revenge. Radon mumbled. The mission in that letter. I finally understand it all now. Your true intention is... Radon confidently swept his hair back and continued. Your intention is for me to get my revenge and conquer the 7 islands. Elsewhere, Utia sat musing aloud. I wonder if I'm right about that. Well then, don't you forget. All of those things, O Supreme One. Back at Raiden's location, he continued the phrase, for the great moon. So that was the saying. The phrase that was once so meaningless was slowly becoming a light of faith. Raiden murmured to himself, Everything is deeply engraved in my heart, for the great, great moon. Rodden stood on the shore holding the treasure chest as the moonlight faded below the horizon. 3 months later, the oppressive heat began to fade, and autumn arrived, bringing with it the Astoria Grand Festival, held once every 2 years. Along Palatio sat in a carriage, thinking to himself, "And I've been dragged into this against my will." He asked his companions, "Is participation mandatory once every 4 years? How annoying." Evan, sitting opposite him, replied to Along Palacio, "According to the schedule, the carriages of the Gold and Eden families have already joined the convoy, sir." He nodded and replied, "Oh, is that so?" Along Palatio thought to himself, "So we have to travel in one big group just because they're afraid of bandits? What a pain. What kind of bizarre custom is this? It's so damn annoying." Time flew by, and the day was almost over. Along Palatio was sitting in an inn holding a mug of beer when it dawned on him that 2 annoying nobles had rushed over to him in the evening to spout nonsense. My Count Palatio, isn't it a bit much to have only 1 guard with you? I suppose your finances have dried up since you just happened to stumble into your title. Along Palatio watched this scene exasperated. "For me, the problem isn't the bandits, it's these nobles." He covered his exasperated face with a plate. "You two really enjoy running your mouths, don't you? Why don't you just go badmouth me behind my back somewhere else and get it over with?" To be honest, this was nothing new for Along Palatio. After all, he was a legendary scoundrel. The Palatio family's power once dominated the entire eastern underworld, and was built on a mountain of money plundered from it. Along Palatio recalled his own history, but once he became content with his current life, "I washed my hands of it all, and now I'm living just fine. What's so hard about that? The underworld is full of danger. I'm not getting involved again." Along Palatio looked at the scheming nobles as if they were hunting dogs. That's precisely why. The eastern underworld has now become a gold mine for all the small fry to fight over, and the rumor that I became a count not through skill but through sheer luck has practically become accepted as fact. Along Palatio thought, tilting his head. Those baseless rumors about the count's family having a backer have started to die down, and now I've just been downgraded to some lucky little brat. I'm well aware of that. And yet those 2 nobles ran up to him spouting nonsense. "Oh, you poor thing! Your pockets must be completely empty, right?" "Sob. If you just say the word, my lord, I'd always be willing to give you some charity." Along Palatio thought helplessly, "But I never thought they'd dare to mock me to my face like this. They're grown men, but they act like children, these lunatics." Along Palatio looked at the 2 nobles a bit puzzled. "But this seems like they're going a little too far." But at that very moment, a thought suddenly struck him. So is this some kind of reunion for the Palatio family's victims? Along Palatio recalled the other houses, Palatio Season, GI, and Son, those who had been used by the Palatio family like walking wallets, and looking at the reality now. They're venting all the frustration that they had to endure. They're furiously venting their anger without any control. Along Palatio sat there helpless, thinking, and I'm not even the one who used them in the first place. Along Palatio just sat there sighing and enduring it. It felt like dealing with a bunch of troll accounts that exist only to provoke people. They must be professional trolls or something. Just then Evan returned, looking surprised. "Oh, they're still not done provoking you? That's some praiseworthy effort." He shook his head, brushing it off. "The best thing to do is just ignore them." "Evan, where were you just now?" He seemed startled for a moment, then replied, "Oh, they were handing these out in the kitchen, sir." Evan held out what he was holding and said, "It's grilled corn." Along Palatio's eyes lit up. "Oh, that looks delicious." As he sat next to Evan gnawing on the grilled corn, he thought to himself, "This survival food is my absolute favorite. Especially on a cold night like this, it really hits the spot. Thinking back my massive underworld legion, it must have been too expensive to feed them, so they all disbanded, huh? This carriage doesn't seem to be well maintained either, but whatever. Forget it." He glanced over at those 2 nobles. "Sounds like they're really cooking something up, huh? Planning to make a move." Along Palatio and Evan sat eating the grilled corn, thoroughly enjoying it and praising it. "It's so good. If it just had a little butter spread on it, it would be perfect." At that moment in the northern region, the land of eternal 9 frosts overrun by barbarian tribes, it was as if no living creature existed. Only a cursed ashen gray enveloped everything. A one-armed man tried to drag himself across the pure white snow. As he struggled to move, he left a trail of bloodstains on the snow. The one-armed man, in both agony and fury, roared, "Those damned Caliburns, they know nothing of honor." He was one of the 8 great chieftains of the Great Khan barbarian tribe, and for the barbarians who worshipped combat death on the battlefield was the greatest glory and noblest dignity. But this time was different, because I fell into the trap of that knight Calibor who challenged me to a duel, and I was defeated by his cowardly sneak attack. The chieftain coughed up a mouthful of poisoned blood. He collapsed, lying sprawled and weak, coughing feebly. The chieftain lay on the white snow, groaning helplessly. If this goes on, what will happen to the Ga of the snow plains? The snow continued to fall relentlessly in the frigid north. The chieftain was being buried deeper and deeper under the cold snow. He lay there crying out with his last breaths. I, Ga, am too ashamed. I cannot close my eyes in peace at death's door. Oh, the cold snow just kept falling thick and heavy. Blood streamed from his eye sockets without stopping. Oh, my flesh and blood! Amidst the frigid north, a voice called out. Call my name! The voice echoed around the chieftain. Chant my great name. The voice commanded, the name you have always worshipped from the beginning until now. The chieftain groaned, whispering the name. He whispered, Lord Achilles. The chieftain's body grew weaker and weaker. He cried out, whispering to the snow, the Great One. With his remaining hand, he tried to push himself up. Great! The chieftain turned his body upward and yelled, My supreme God! Lord Achilles. He looked up towards Lord Achilles, pleading, I humbly dare to speak your name. Lord Achilles smiled and praised him. Very good. In that case, I shall grant your wish. The carriage carrying a long pallatio continued on its way to the Rote family's grand banquet. While on the way to the social gathering, this sweet middle-aged life continued. Even though other families were also participating, the taunts never ceased. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, slung their arms around Along Pallatio's neck, singing and dancing. What? That's all it takes to become the talk of the town.
I'm so pathetic I could just cry.
Along Pallatio just calmly said to himself, We just need to ignore them. Don't feed them. It's basic gamer etiquette. Oh, looks like we've caught some plump prey. The caravan traveled a bit further before stopping. Let's rest here for the night. Victory belonged to the one who ignored those who were desperately trying to provoke. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, were furious and cursed. That bastard, he just keeps ignoring us, doesn't he? I can't believe it. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, thought of something and turned to ask each other, So what's the deal with the reinforced escort? I've already checked with an item. It's just that little brat and that thuggish knight. How dare he have the nerve to sit at the same table as nobility? Along Pallatio was gnawing on his corn when he cried out, Ah, it's hot. Evan worriedly called out, Let me blow on it for you. The other two sighed in resignation. Looks like the rumors about them being a bunch of useless fools were true after all. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, conferred with each other. In that case, we can proceed with the plan to attack the underworld. We don't have to show the Palacios any respect anymore. The two of them laughed sinisterly, telling each other, the immense wealth and power circulating in the underworld. I'll finally get to taste it for myself. If we can take over the underworld, then we should probably give him a little gift, right? The two nobles, Gold and Eden, excitedly imagined the future. Let's give him a thorough lesson on how cruel this world truly is. Haha, you're pretty kind, you know. As the two were laughing, they heard a rustling sound. When they turned to look towards the source of the noise, they shrieked. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, pointed in that direction, trembling as they said, A monster! Some ran inside while others ran out to fight. Mage, protect the front! A mage shot a flare up into the sky, signaling danger to the entire caravan. The flare signaled to bring weapons and illuminated the monsters, and, when the members of the caravan recognized them as goblins, they breathed a sigh of relief, saying, What the heck, it's just goblins. They were a type of weak monster commonly found in the forest. But then they suddenly had a sobering realization. What if there are enough of them to overwhelm everything? When the caravan saw the scene before them, they were stunned. The monsters carrying heavy weapons advanced. The group heading to the banquet scowled, crying out, Damn it! The lookouts outside, they're all dead. What in the world happened? Many of the members stammered, I've never seen a goblin that looks like this before. Its size is different too. Is it some new kind of mutant? On top of that, for it to be overflowing with so much magical energy, that means both sides leaped into a combat stance, but there was a clear power gap. The creature's physique was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The tireless monsters attacked relentlessly, slamming into the ground where the humans stood, sending earth and rock flying. But the humans didn't back down. They immediately fought back. The crawling monsters scattered, then regrouped. They paused, looked around, and screeched, Kehikich! Now the monsters had all gathered in one spot. The mages and knights murmured amongst themselves. A third circle spell. Stone wall and a second circle spell. Shield of protection. Was there another mage? Who could it be? Just then, along Palazzo appeared, commanding, "Enhance!" The knights and mages turned to look at the one who had just attacked. The light converged on a single point, then swirled forward continuously. Along Palazzo extended his hand and threw a punch. The force sent the monsters reeling and screeching, "Kehei-kich!" They couldn't escape the enhancement circle. The Kehei-kick sounds continued relentlessly. A huge swarm of monsters was trapped inside the enhancement sphere. The humans were also getting choked up by the cloud of dust. Stepping back, along Palazzo calmly walked towards the sphere. He clasped his hands together, pressing them hard to create a vacuum. A high-intensity light burst from between along Palazzio's hands. Earth, stone, and blocks of light began to explode and rain down everywhere. Along Palazzo recited another primal command. The circlet on along Palazzio's arm lit up segment by segment like a power bar representing the enhancement sphere. Then it exploded, scattering the monsters. Along Palazzo remained standing calmly in the same spot. Observing everything, the two nobles, Gold and Eden, stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they were seeing. The mages and knights were also stunned in disbelief. Along Palazzo turned back and reminded everyone, "Don't just stand there, get ready." Everyone immediately regained their spirits to fight the approaching monsters. Both sides, humans and monsters, charged and clashed. Along Palazzo waved his hand, lending his power to the mages. Countless slashes shot from his hand, striking the monsters perfectly. The precise slashes didn't harm any of the humans. Evan, who was also fighting, turned to look in awe. Time passed. The brave humans continued to fight without retreating. Neither side stopped until dawn broke. After the silence fell, the people who had been hiding in safe places ran out, cheering joyfully. "It's over! It's finally over!" The mages and knights panted heavily. Though exhausted, they were relieved and proud. All of them looked towards Along Palazzo, their thoughts focused on him. Looking at Along Palazzo in his armor, everyone wondered who he could possibly be. But no one knew that his face had gone deathly pale. "I almost really died just now. I'm in trouble now." Along Palazzo looked down at the special circlet on his arm. Even though the number of times he could use magic per day had increased, it was still only 3 or 4 times. When it comes to a real fight, I'm just an ordinary person with a meager magic core. Evan ran over and asked, "Lord Count, are you injured anywhere?" Along Palazzo nodded and replied, I'm fine." Along Palazzo, his expression still pale, thought to himself, "Even with Evan here, losing the ability to protect myself is truly terrifying." Confused, Evan asked again, "Are you really all right, my lord?" He replied, "I'm fine, really." Along Palazzo thought, "At first I was so annoyed I considered going alone, but it was lucky I chose to go with the nobles. However, this violet stone is the biggest problem. Why would it appear now? The spirit crystal of Advent is a strange phenomenon. It occurs just before an evil god is about to descend. The monsters affected by it become more ferocious, and their physical abilities grow stronger," Along Palazzo mused as he walked. How can this be happening? This shouldn't be happening. He was still puzzled by a few things. Clearly, it was only supposed to happen when the 5 great sins were born. Have the rules of the world collapsed to the point that these evil gods can appear, and this signals that it won't be long before they descend upon this land? As this thought crossed his mind, Along Palazzo clutched his head in helplessness. But the children haven't even awakened the power of the 5 great sins yet. Why? What in the world is going on? That day, Along Palazzo decided to put his worries aside for now. He resolved to gather information immediately upon arrival. He glanced back, observing, "If this situation continues, our heads will be rolling sooner or later." Behind him, the 2 nobles were still in a state of shock, holding their heads, their faces pale and speechless. The next day at Duke Rote's estate, gloomy from the long journey, Along Palazzo groaned wearily. "We're finally here, because our entire party ran into one problem after another." The curtains rose on the grand socialite banquet. Evan sat behind Along Palazzo, massaging his shoulders. He whined, "I just want to go home and sleep. So exhausting." The grand banquet inside gathered countless nobles, all refined and elegant. But it was all just a painted curtain. Along Palazzo looked around, sizing up the Lotta family's party. "Wow, all this gold decoration must have cost a fortune," Evan said dismissively, sipping his wine. "They're just showing off their money. I bet no one would notice if I took a piece. So expensive it just looks tacky and gaudy." While Along Palatio was lost in thought, he heard a voice from afar. My Duke Lot, you are truly extraordinary." The Lotta nobleman laughed delightedly and replied, "It's because my little bird won't leave me alone." The other nobles chuckled and advised, "Oh my. Your Grace, you must take care of your health." The more Along Palatio watched these scenes, the more disgusted he became. He thought to himself, "There's nothing good about mingling with these nobles. I don't want any part of this. It's better to back away." But just then someone targeted him. Over there is Along Palatio. He couldn't believe his bad luck. He had just decided to avoid trouble when two nobles, Gold and Eden, approached him obsequiously, calling out, "Ho, ho, ho! Count Palatio, might you spare a moment of your time?" The two of them presented a tribute before him. "This is the finest meat from my domain. Would you care to try some? I was thinking of providing support to your domain. What do you think?" Along Palatio tilted his head in confusion. "What is this? Why so suddenly?" Seeing his expression, the two nobles, Gold and Eden, trembled with anxiety. "The Count's face," they cried inwardly in fear. "We're doomed." The two nobles, Gold and Eden, tried to reassure each other. "But we shouldn't be panicking like this." Flashback to 1 day ago after the goblin battle. "Did you see that?" It's magic." The two nobles, Gold and Eden, clutched their heads in confusion, staring at Along Palatio and Evan. One turned to the other and asked, Did you see that just now?" It was magic. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, ran over to Baron Cayman. Could we borrow your mage for a moment? We have a question for her if you don't mind." The person they dragged away was a third circle mage that Baron Cayman had brought along to show off his prestige. The third circle mage, holding her staff, asked in confusion, "What is it?" The two nobles asked frantically, "That surge of magical power just now." They recalled the terrifying power from before and couldn't help but shudder. They asked tremblingly, "That was only about second circle, right?" "Is that right?" The third circle mage pondered. Second circle." Then she denied it, leaving the two men stunned. "How could that possibly be second circle?" "It definitely wasn't. He is on a level far beyond me." "So, third circle or higher?" Tears welled up in the eyes of the two nobles, Gold and Eden. They asked themselves, became Count Palatio through luck? Don't be ridiculous. They had witnessed that power firsthand. He didn't need any guards. The look in Along Palatio's eyes when he turned back during that magic battle still haunted them. They realized he was hiding his true ruthless and cold-blooded nature. That's why they were now trying to save their own skins by bribing him. They had no other choice. It had come to this. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, decided they had no choice but to bow their heads. I dared to be disrespectful to you, Lord Palatio. I was so lost in my own foolish delusions that I lost my mind." The two of them begged, "Please have mercy on us." Evan walked up beside Along Palatio and asked, bewildered, "What's all this? Did you follow me all the way here just to say this?" He tiredly wondered into himself, what in the world is going on?
I still don't understand any of this.
Evan placed a hand on his shoulder and offered, "Should I take care of them?" He shook his head. "It's just noisy and a waste of energy." He sighed, remembering. But no matter how open-minded this country is, this has crossed a line that can't be ignored. Along Palatio replied to Evan, "Let me handle this." He thought, even though I don't actually have that kind of power, but whatever. I'll just scare them as much as I can. After that, Along Palatio glared, trying his best to play the villain. The two nobles, Gold and Eden, fell to their knees on the banquet hall floor in terror. They clung to each other, weeping. "We're screwed. We might as well be dead." The party went on its lively atmosphere, feeling completely fake. After scanning the room, Along Palatio recalled that he'd already sent Evan to the Intelligence Guild. "Well then, I guess I'll try to dig up some dirt on these new nobles." Along Palatio picked up a pastry, nibbling on it while listening to the nobles chat. "Oh ho, it looks like those two are discussing something secret, huh?" Two nobles were chatting in a nearby corner. Along Palatio tried to eavesdrop. He considered using magic to enhance his hearing, but that was a separate issue. One of the nobles asked the other, "Have you heard about Duke Comarin and Count Saronia?" Along Palatio was shocked to hear this. "Of course I know about that," he thought. "I hear they're about to become allies, is that right?" The alliance itself is strange enough, he thought to himself while eating the pastry. Still, what's the big deal? It's nothing to worry about. Along Palatio looked at the two and clicked his tongue. After all, the families behind those two have never gotten along. That alliance won't last long anyway. Then he nibbled on his favorite tart. Along Palatio marveled, "This tea is amazing, and this tart shop is truly top-notch." But there's even more shocking news. Try not to let your jaw drop when you hear this. The two nobles continued their conversation. Their leader isn't one of those two. Then who on earth is it? They whispered while Along Palatio was still lost in his tart. They say it's... When he heard the name they mentioned, he felt like he'd been struck by lightning. The name the two nobles uttered was Palatio. Upon hearing it, Along Palatio dropped his tart. Their leader, he thought, looking over at them in complete bewilderment. Along Palatio felt like he was going insane when he heard them say, "They say it's Count Palatio himself." He mentally reviewed his entire life up to this point. What kind of nonsense are they spouting? As for Duchess Cameron, I only met her once back when she was still a young lady. And as for Lady Saronia, I've only met her a few times. Along Palatio held his head, exasperated. I've never even met the current Count Saronia. How could such a ridiculous rumor be spreading around? No matter how you look at it, it's just idle gossip. Just then, someone else rushed over, calling out, "Count Palatio." Along Palatio wearily wondered, why are so many people trying to talk to me today? It's making me really uneasy. The noble approached and began to speak. I am Ikamen, third son of the ducal house, Asudalong from the Astoria kingdom. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Ah, I see, Along realized. It's because this is such a grand ceremony that nobles from allied kingdoms would also attend. Along Palatio nodded in greeting. Yes, it's a pleasure. I am Count Palatio. Suddenly, Cayman turned aggressive. I hear the only reason you became a count, and it was pure luck, is that right? I was so jealous I just had to come see your face for myself. Got any special tricks? At this, he got a little annoyed and cursed inwardly. Well, well, well. In this day and age, even taro-flavored waffle cones can talk, apparently. Just then, other nobles came over and confronted the idiot Cayman. What did you just say? They stood protectively in front of Along Palatio. That is blatant disrespect. An insult to us nobles of the Astoria kingdom. Cayman, alarmed, tried to explain, No, that's not what I meant. What is this? Wasn't he supposed to be a harmless punching bag I could take my anger out on? That damn Sidon. I shall now introduce myself. I am Cayman Asutalong, a romantic and elegant gentleman. I have traveled a great distance to take the youngest daughter of the ducal house of Lotta as my wife. My dear fiancé, would you care to taste this exquisite tart I have brought for you? There's no such thing as a woman who's perfect in every way. While walking with his fiancée, Cayman glanced at two ladies who had just passed by. He then immediately switched into his nasty judgmental mode. She should really pay a bit more attention to her figure, shouldn't she? Cayman blabbered on next to Lady Lotta. Oh, and that lady's nose is a bit upturned, isn't it? Then he turned back to his fiancée to butter her up. But luckily, Lady Lotta takes after her mother and is truly beautiful. Now's the time to flirt. Lady Lot, looking disgusted, said, Regarding our engagement, I would like to reconsider it if you don't mind. Cayman cried out in alarm. What? He sat there reaching out after her. Lady Lotta, not understanding why. But in that moment, the engagement between me and Lady Lotta was broken. That Cayman furiously walked into the main banquet hall. I've come so far for this. So infuriating. Just then, Cayman saw Along Palatio standing alone munching on a pastry. Cayman sized him up, black hair and a cold expression. So it's that guy Count Palatio, huh? I heard he's just some lucky brat who doesn't know anything and he has no backing either. At that moment, he saw him as something very easy to bully. A perfect target to vent my anger on. The flashback ends. In the present, the nobles, barons, and counts asked Cayman, Hey you, did you forget to bring your manners? The kingdom of Astoria is our longtime ally, you know. Common? Like a little mouse stammered an explanation. No, that's not it. It was because... Along Palatio, watching this, couldn't help but sigh in exasperation. Just how unlucky do you have to be to make these three show up at the same time? And yet, this scene of nobles ganging up to pressure someone, it looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? He watched Cayman bow deeply and cry out, I'm sorry. The three high-ranking nobles scolded him like strict military officers. Hey, you! You think a simple apology is enough to end this? Terrified, he cried out, I said I'm sorry while being punished. The three men still wouldn't let up. We asked you if an apology is enough. Along Palatio finally remembered what this reminded him of. Ah, this brings back memories of my military service. Cayman started sobbing, then turned and ran away, whimpering, I have committed a great disrespect. I deserve to die. Duke Latte, Marquis Medano, and Count Palan walked over to him and asked, "Count Palacio, are you all right?" He quickly waved his hands and replied, "I'm fine." Alan Palladio kept this to himself later, but what's gotten into everyone today? I'm starting to get a little scared. From what he could tell, they had already started to make their move. This proves the rumor is true. And if Antia and Zenonia seriously enter the political arena, then Palatio's power as their leader will be immense. Alan Palladio wondered, is it because of that rumor? At this rate, it's going to be a huge mess. It's better to clarify that it's just a rumor. Marquis Medano stepped forward to start a conversation. "Come to think of it, I don't believe I've ever spoken with you, Count," Duke Latte continued. "You must be very busy, I understand." Alan Palladio, flustered, began to speak. "Well, actually..." Marcus Medano rubbed his hands together and asked, "Ah, I hear that you, Count Palladio, have been busy researching magic lately. Coincidentally, I recently acquired a few rather fine artifacts." He continued, "And so I would like to gift you these holy relics that are capable of storing magical energy. What do you say?" Duke Lot and Count Palan also stepped forward with an offer. "What a coincidence. I've also prepared a gift. Count, please accept this small token of our sincerity." Alan Pallatio's head was spinning. I have to clarify that it's just a rumor. But Alan couldn't resist the temptation, so he chose to remain silent. He received 2 magical artifacts and 5 mana recovery potions. The next morning at the Duke Lotta family's villa in the drawing room, a mysterious woman asked Marcus Medano, "How did everything go?" He replied, "Fortunately, he happily accepted the gifts. Small gifts among nobles are merely social etiquette, but a precious item, like a holy relic, carries a different meaning. It's what those who wish to join a faction offer to their leader." Which means, the woman said, just the fact that he was willing to accept them is a relief. Marquis Medano burst out laughing. "It's all thanks to the generosity of Duchess Cameron." She raised her hand excitedly. "Welcome, Marquis Medano." The Duchess smiled. Cameron happily declared, "From now on, we are officially on the same side." He replied, "This is indeed a great honor." Everyone was more than willing to agree. He thought to himself, Duke Anthea has always been such a private person. It's rare to meet face to face, yet this time she came in person, and she's only meeting with a select few individuals. It's highly likely she has already chosen the necessary pawns, subtly using her money and power. She did it to bypass all formalities. Although the rumors seem random and baseless, they are in fact a political move. An incredibly clear opportunity has presented itself. We absolutely must seize it. Duchess Anthea then spoke, breaking the silence. "Then it's time for us to take action. This is the 4th day since the opening banquet. For some reason, the number of gifts just keeps increasing every day. It must be because of those ridiculous rumors about my relationship with Anthea and Zenonia that they're all rushing to curry favor like this." A cunning glint appeared in his eyes. "Well, since I've already accepted them, they probably won't ask for them back, right? I'll just gather all this stuff and find a way to slip away." But then a voice from behind startled him a little. Evan spoke, "Count." Seeing him jump, he seemed a bit puzzled. "Why do you seem so startled, my lord?" "I have returned." Alon let out a small sigh of relief. "I was just lost in thought, that's all." Afterwards, the 2 of them returned to his room. Hearing the news from Evan startled him, and he exclaimed, "About the north! An evil god has really descended upon the northern region." He replied, "Yes. The situation in Caliburn is currently in utter chaos. Based on ancient texts, it's possible Metis is also connected to this evil force." He rubbed his forehead and asked, "And what about the additional information I requested?" He answered, "The person you're looking for is currently residing in that village. It's located in the north of the Asutralong Kingdom." This made him nod in satisfaction. "Excellent, we can just stop by on the way. We will depart for Caliban at once." This sudden decision startled Evan slightly. "Why in such a hurry, my lord? Why must the destination be Caliban? Are you really deciding to head north?" He replied, "We'll discuss the details on the way. Prepare to leave immediately." He nodded in confirmation. "I understand." After Evan left, Alan slumped back in his chair, holding his head in frustration. "I really didn't want any of this to happen. It's the presence of disaster-level entities comparable to the 5 cardinal sins, the evil gods. Because of the influence of the Crystal of Advent, it's impossible to predict which evil god will descend in mortal form. That's why I've been working so hard to gather information and stop it early. I never thought things would escalate this quickly. From my experience playing the game and witnessing hundreds of possible scenarios, the fate of this world has become crystal clear in my mind. The alliance between kingdoms will fracture and then completely dissolve, leading to a meaningless war on the tainted lands, corrupted by otherworldly power and ending in annihilation. If that happens, my current life will also vanish in an instant, even though I've already prepared a counterplan. After the evil god descends, there will be a temporary period of peace lasting a few months before it fully awakens into a divine incarnation. During that transitional period, its power in the form of a divine spirit won't have reached its perfect state yet. Seizing the opportunity then is probably the most viable option, though nothing is certain. But I have to take the gamble because it's the only path left. I wonder what kind of thing that child would like. Scene change to 1 week later. Just then someone ran in to report Commander. He took the letter and began to read it. Suddenly his eyes widened in surprise. He immediately called for his vice commander. The other person replied, "Yes, sir." He ordered, "Spread the word that the plan to advance north will be postponed for another 2 weeks." In a field near the village of Pakuran, in the northern part of the Asutralong kingdom, he had arrived. His eyes looked a bit dazed as he thought to himself, "It's so unexpected to run into him right now." A young boy walked up to the two of them and said, "Hello, sir." He continued his thoughts. He really does have a captivating appearance. This boy is Elibank, the main character of the RPG Psychedelia, the one the player controls. No matter what, a protagonist's aura is something else entirely. His face is exactly as I remember it from the game. So it's a boy, huh? His appearance is truly exceptional. He looked down at the boy and asked, "Do you know who I am?" The boy scratched his head and replied, "No, sir. It's just, I'm really excited to meet strangers for the first time. Anyway, my name is Elibank." Looking at the boy, he continued his thoughts. Let's see just how different this real world is. Compared to the game, the concept of a main character is unmistakable. Sooner or later, he'll become famous and possess overwhelming power. Standing in front of the character I once controlled, this feeling is truly strange. Breaking his train of thought, he spoke. What a bright and very well-mannered boy. Then he took out a small pouch and placed it in the boy's hand. "Here, take this." Opening the pouch and taking out 1 gold coin, the boy asked in confusion, "Huh, isn't this a gold coin, sir?" Ignoring the boy, he turned and called for Evan. Evan immediately brought out a suitcase and opened it to reveal several mana potions, which left the boy utterly stunned. After that, Evan took out countless more gift boxes. In a flash, a mountain of gifts was piled up behind them. Pointing at the pile, he confidently declared, "All of this is yours now." The boy's eyes went wide in disbelief. All of this is really for me?" Then he asked, again puzzled, "Why would you suddenly give me so much money, sir?" He replied, "Just consider it an investment from me." He thought to himself, "I've already provided everything necessary for the main character's initial growth phase." He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice firm. "Because in the future, you are destined to become someone even greater than this." He continued to think. "So grow up quickly and clean up those evil gods for me, will you?" After that, he turned and left. Spending this much should be enough to be considered thoughtful care, right? You have to use material wealth to win people over at the very least. Then he suddenly turned back to introduce himself. "Forgive me, my introduction is a bit late. I am Count Palatio. Remember this name well. It is the name of the benefactor who sponsored you, so that you may achieve future success." The boy hurriedly chased after him. "Thank you, sir. Oh, no. My Lord Count, I will never forget your kindness." Sitting in the carriage, he looked out and thought, wait, was he always this energetic? A dark fantasy game shouldn't have such a bright atmosphere. Beside him, Evan spoke up. "My Lord Count, about what happened. I generally understand what you are doing, but is it really all right to leave just like that without a clear explanation?" He replied, "He's a smart kid. I'm sure he'll figure it out on his own." He continued to think. "The current situation is a matter of life and death, and it's urgent. I can't just hang around grinding for favorability points. To be safe, I even activated the auto-leveling mode for the main character. The power of paying to win is just too strong." Evan then assessed, in any case, that child seems to possess a natural talent. A dense magical power is surging strongly from him, a complete contrast to his simple clothes. It appears he's carrying some kind of ancient artifact on him. The Count added, "Even I can feel that flow of magic." He continued to muse. Normally, before the journey begins, the character should only have basic stats, but this is definitely a point of divergence from the original story in the game. Perhaps it's a result of the butterfly effect that I couldn't possibly have foreseen. For a main character, this kind of change is even more pronounced, but oh, whatever. As long as my plan to enjoy a peaceful life isn't affected, it's fine. He then said, The stronger he gets, the more it benefits me, right? This investment will definitely yield a worthy return. After all, Elebong is one of the rare few with a kind heart in this cruel world, so there's probably nothing to worry about. Wait. A kind heart. He quickly turned to Evan and asked, "About that. That guy Dellis, do you think he'll agree to meet with me?" He thought to himself, he was so scared he never even set foot in the orphanage once. "I never expected things to turn out this way." Evan replied, "I believe he will agree to meet you, my lord." He sighed. "I suppose you're right.